Good evening and welcome to the Nilvah Nexus. My name is James and we do this every Thursday night here on Google Plus and YouTube. Weekly Torah study discussion, hangout, handshake and good time, all around Torah loving goodness. If you want to see other things that we do like this and you're interested in what we're talking about, you can always go to the Idol Smasher YouTube page and check out what we do every Thursday on the Nilvah Nexus. And also check out the Facebook page, the Nilvah Nexus, as well on Facebook, obviously. Now, we are in the midst of Passover, Pesach. And, it's actually something good to be brought up. I brought up that this is actually something that the Ben Noach of the world should really take heart in. Not everything is about us. I mean, yes, we're allowed to embrace Torah, but there's an argument going on now, especially with a few people who just want to kind of give some of us flack for being Ben Noach, and yet we recognize, things like Shabbat and Passover. Passover is a great metaphor for exactly what's going on in the world, people choosing to attach themselves to Torah, to Israel, and learn about their creator. And I always thought Passover was a perfect metaphor for that, because people came with them. There's a mixed multitude. There are chances that there's some that might have joined up between Egypt and Sinai, and even after Sinai, like Jethro. But particularly on the Passover, there were people that left with, Israel herself. It just wasn't an Israel thing. Although, yeah, she was the reason why, or her cry to God might have been anyway. What I'm getting at here is, in Egypt, it was pretty multicultural. Particularly after, you can consider after 400 years after Egypt was the center of the world, it saved the world in great famine and whatnot. Hi, Bob. Good to see you, sir. Shalom. So, you have a multicultural, very civilized bunch of slaves and others. It's quite possible Egyptians might have left with them as well. We don't know. It's just called a mixed multitude for a reason, and particularly what we know about Egypt and what it was at the time. Chances are that was a very multicultural bunch, a multicultural mix that came out with Israel at the time of after the Passover that morning. So I always thought that was, Noahides come from we come in all flavors and all colors around the globe, and we kind of each bring something to this discussion. But the Passover, I think, is one that I would suggest Ben Noach should learn the whole Torah. Let me just get that down. Just learn the Torah. Go buy yourself a nice Chumash and one with Rashi and learn your Torah. But particularly Passover, I think, is a great holiday in particular for Ben Noach. So some might tell you that it's no good and it's not our place as Ben Noach I would suggest Passover first after Shabbat, definitely, as something to be aware of. And what happens in the sky, in the stars, what happens in nature about this time. And keep in mind for those 8 days, what's been going on, what's happening right now in the Torah we're on the fourth day now, or third day we're in the fourth now. Yeah. So just something I thought I'd bring up. I thought Passover is, I don't think there's anything wrong with learning it and maybe seeing yourself as some of the mixed multitudes, some that came out. And when the golden calf came, knew better than to go near it. Let's hope that in this particular time of year, if the non-Jew can, this is our time to shine, All right, what do I know? I don't know much, but that's my opinion anyway, in case anybody ever gives you flack for it. I got flack for the first time. I've had, atheist folk rib me on a daily basis, and Christian folk used to love to rib, back in the day, but now I'm getting ribbed by Noahides, and it's just weird. So Passover is great. So I thought we'd just do a Passover hangout tonight. I've got some of the readings that we read each day ready here, and I can get the Chumash out, and we can just talk about it and kind of wax Torah on this fine Passover. It's not quite the Parsha study. It's a Parsha, but a very special Parsha. So I'm going to close those out. Ross is here. Bob Wells is here. Good to see you. So, big doings across the sea, huh? Oh, so much fun. Oh, jolly goodness. I mean, people are just anxious for it. It's in the air. I'm so disappointed by so many of my friends on Facebook and friends and family member who are just anxious. They just can't wait, for a bomb. And I'm really now, I'm just kind of dumbfounded at this point. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know how to, maybe I'm just numb by now. War is distressing in any cost. Because in the end, no matter who won or lost, there's still going to be a massive graveyard that everybody's got to clean up. You wouldn't want to wish that on anybody's kids. See what I'm saying? It's not about right or wrong, who holds the aces, this bunch, that bunch, east, west. But I digress on that. Apparently, we dropped a big bomb over there after, and I just heard that ISIS had left that area. Thought they had gotten away from that part of Afghanistan, and that's where we dropped the big bomb. So I actually heard the media today, and this is what saddens me, is they called it an Islamic site. They were tunnels. It was tunnels. It's an Islamic. Well, it was in an Islamic country. Look, are gentlemen's clubs Christian in a so-called Christian nation like the United States? I don't think anybody would say yes. So let's just not call tunnels an Islamic site. Thank you. I'm not going to mention your network, but it starts with a C. Maybe it's one of the affiliates. I don't know. But yeah. So I'm not going to say it. An Islamic site. Bombed an Islamic site today. Okay. That's great. That's just peachy. Anybody have anything they want to share while we're here together, while I'm getting my act in gear? As always, I'm running late. I had a big puddle of water to clean up from the kitchen because my little girl thought it'd be great to try to swim in the kitchen. All right. Well, we can read from the Torah. The Exodus 12 would be the first day where we start. And there's small readings, and there's some, but we could do that. And 5 days. So, and then I'm not real sure about, is it Maftir? I don't know. Somebody can help me out on that. Maftir? I've never looked into that, and the page goes blank on Kabbat. So if anybody has a clue and wants to help us out here, I'd be much obliged. What's on your mind, guys? Speak. If it was a solo show, I'd do it, and just put it on tape. Turn a fan on. The rain came today, so things are a little heavy and stuffy.
I'm looking through my books. I don't have a lot on Passover. And what I have, I think, are commentaries on the Haggadah. So I don't think that would really have anything to do with the readings.
Go for it. Or
those are, well, I don't know if I really have anything that would really jump out. And I'm just going to glance through this one, but I probably don't have anything that would really have anything to do with the readings.
Okay.
Yeah, Passover is kind of the one that I sort of am not that much involved with. When I first started going to Shoal, that was the one that I was kind of told, well, don't really come to the Passover Seder, because that's more specifically for Jews, and they didn't want to, that was kind of the line was with that. So I've gotten involved more with a lot of the other holidays, but Passover is the one that I really haven't been involved with. Also, this week I got sick over the weekend, so I kind of missed it anyway. And this coming Shabbos, I'm going to try to get invited to someone's place for lunch, because they always have it set up for Passover, even though it's not the Passover Seder, but they still have it. They got it going all week, and so it's an experience. Yeah, but the Seder has been the one thing that I haven't really gotten involved with.
I went to one. They didn't have lamb. They didn't have money for it at the time. That's just how it goes. But we did everything, and it, that was at a conservative family from a conservative synagogue. And then, I heard the same thing. And then last week, a lady who's been here, her name's Brooke. She was here a couple times before. Kind of a rarity to see her, but always a pleasure. And she's like, can Noahides, do a Passover Seder? And at the same time, I go, no. And then Rabbi Kostanov goes, yes. Like, what? Because my and then I gave my thing, which was that he said it's fine. I said, well, what about the Passover ceremony that we're told to remember? A guy who's obviously close to you has to go through full conversion before eating it.
Before eating what?
Before you eat the lamb. And he said that's only on the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I guess there's a delay, but yeah, we're probably get ready to say the same thing.
Yeah, full conversion, and there has to be someone.
No, not that. It's that the lamb only is during the time of the temple. So today it's not even. Today it's not even. That would not be an issue.
I just now, all these years, I thought completely differently about that. I thought maybe that was the reason why they didn't actually have mutton there at the table, was to make it a, kind of like nullifying an idol kind of a thing, that they wouldn't be violating something. And I always had that in my head, it's like, I'd have paid for it. Anyway, that doesn't apply necessarily. It applies in Torah learning, but that has nothing to do with what we do for Passover. Blew my mind. They tried that this year.
I'm not exactly sure how that works. If they have to do the sacrifice on the Temple Mount, and if they do the sacrifice, is there something that requires the altar? I mean, people think they know where the altar is, but there's different opinions on where the altar is, and nobody's really sure. But is there something where it just? Is there something that has to be done with regard to the temple, or does it just simply have to be done in the Temple Mount, or does it just simply have to be done within the old city?
I
honestly don't know the laws about that.
I hear this is a Temple Institute thing.
Every year they try to do it.
Really?
And each year it gets a little bit more momentum where more people are trying to do it. But we've got there's a fellow that sometimes attends the show that I go to, that he's part of that crowd that tries to go up there. They'll take a goat with them, or they'll take a lamb with them and try to go up on the Temple Mount. They get arrested. They do that every year.
This time they nipped it in the bud. Apparently, they're going in homes and taking lambs.
Yeah, because if they, the more that the Temple Mount faithful people try to do this, they're pushing the possibility of Arabs rioting. They're worried that if they ever actually got a lamb up on the Temple Mount, and if they sacrificed the lamb up on the Temple Mount, the Arabs would go absolutely ballistic. And the Israeli government is very afraid of that.
I'd heard something that they could do. They could, the way it's something Ross would know, and I think Gabby even might know. They could build the temple and leave the mosque. That there was a way, or that they could build it, and it wouldn't require. I don't know what he meant by that. I didn't push. We should.
Well, the location of the altar is the most important part. Everything else is based upon the location of the altar. So it all depends on where you think the altar goes. And there's different theories about where the altar goes. And the main theory that most people agree with is it's just to the west of the Dome of the Rock, and the Dome of the Rock would be where the temple would stand, and that would have to be, if that's the case, that would have to be destroyed. There's also a strong theory, and it's the theory that I kind of lean towards, but I mean, who am I? But it's that it's to the south of the Dome of the Rock. And if it's to the south of the Dome of the Rock, then it's actually between the Dome of the Rock and the big mosque that's on the southern end. And so it would actually be in a vacant area that could be used. And there's people that use that as an idea. So it depends on who they're going with.
Asher Meza, good to have you. Welcome. Shalom. Shalom, shalom. We're discussing Temple Mount and where the altar might actually be. Is it in the Dome of the Rock? There are theories west. There are theories about one south. Because, they tried the Passover lamb out there, and I didn't know that everybody been trying it every year. I didn't know this was like it just been gaining momentum all these years. I thought that, and apparently every time they just get, they get shut down every time. I don't know. My friend Doreen in there, she's stringent. That she's glad that it didn't happen. That she would feel, and I can kind of see where she's coming from, that if we rely too much on things like offerings, animal offerings in particular, God's going to say just about the same thing he said in the Torah last week. Pile your, was it peace offerings on your meal offer? Was that, pile offering upon offering. I didn't bring you out of Egypt to give me offerings. She might, I don't know.
She doesn't. Yeah. She doesn't like the idea of offerings at all.
Yeah.
Which I'm not. I guess there are people that, they feel that way.
Why would the Torah? I mean, I know that I'm English and I know very little. I know a bit of Hebrew, but why would it be so clearly spoken? Okay, the slaughter. Okay, we don't get, but we get species. We get reasons for it. We've gotten, it's pretty clear for the most part, the involvement of animals and how I can understand why she doesn't like the idea, but to say that it's wrong to consider it or to maybe make an offering, Jacob brought an offering there to the land. That was historic. They want the Passover lamb. They could have a true Passover Seder in the land. I can see that. I don't see I don't.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what the laws are regarding that. It's something that I haven't really looked at. I know that the Passover has to be done in Jerusalem, but as far as the details as to where it needs to be slaughtered, what needs to be done, I honestly don't know.
What
That's not something I've looked at. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. They did this. The lamb was done in Egypt. There was no temple. There was no Mishkan. Where did they just pour the blood? I mean, in the doorposts and then in the ground where they, that's a lot. That's a big doorpost
Right,
for everything.
right. But that was the initial. That was the initial, and then what was done later was like a memory of it. So the mitzvahs for the Jews are like a memory for that, a remembrance for it. What they were doing the first time around was something unique for that one time. I've got these maps in here in this book. I don't know if it'll show up very good. I don't know, but this is not really. Maybe I don't know. This is a book. Okay, you've got the. This is one of the three theories of where the temple would fit in comparison to the Dome of the Rock and that. And then I've got. I don't know if it's. Hopefully I can get this across here. Here's another one which is almost the same, just a little bit of a different angle. That's also showing it over the Dome of the Rock. And this is the other theory, which has the. Let me see if I can get out here. You can see it being in the area between, like a vacant area between the Dome of the Rock and the mosque that's to the south end of the Temple Mount. And this particular book. Very, very happy to find this by Rabbi Shalom Dov Steinberg.
What was the name of it?
Translated The Third Beis HaMikdash. Okay. And it leans towards the third theory. And it gives different ideas. And there's some fellow named he's nicknamed the Naked Archaeologist, which is kind of an odd name, but I always avoided his YouTube videos because of his odd name. But apparently he gives a lot of exclamation for the third theory also. It has to do with the water table levels and a variety of other things. Descriptions of the third of the temple and the third. I mean, the Second Temple time, the Roman era, just different descriptions that they argue for the third theory. But most people they assume it's near the Dome of the Rock. So I'm not really sure if the people were to get up on the Temple Mount, where would they, consider the altar to be? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. What do you think about the annual attempt to offer a lamb on Passover there in Jerusalem? You there, sir? No? Is your mic working? I used to, when I was back in MySpace, way back in the day when I was first really beginning to actually take this a bit more seriously in my life, I was real big on the idea, why don't we just build it? What's it going to take to build it? Who do we got to get rid of? How big's the wall got to be? How many missiles do we need aimed outward? Let's do it. And this guy, and he posted the meme you see of the guy sitting at a desk and he's repeatedly banging his head on this desk, and blood's coming out as he's banging his little stick figure. And I was shocked by that. And looking back now, I feel foolish. What if it, like some people have said to me, what if it is the third temple is actually about the realization that, the body is the temple. Maybe that realization needs to come before we can begin to build a house. It's an idea. It's been thrown around before. Are you there, Asher? Okay.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, look at that. Great.
What do you think about? I asked you a question. I didn't hear from you. I thought your mic was broken. What do you think?
I was typing it out.
Oh,
if you go on your YouTube page, or the one on the page where this thing is being broadcast through, I wrote the answer there, but my camera is not working. So I thought my mic also wasn't working. Okay, fine. Yeah, so traditionally, I mean, I lived in Israel for 5 years, and I know every year in the old city, there's a myth or there's a story floating around that they're finally going to sacrifice a lamb. It's not really a sacrifice, but slaughter a lamb on the Temple Mount, right? And they're saying that they're going to march up there and do it, and it hasn't been done. We know that the Samaritans in Har Bracha every year slaughter the sacrifice, or I'm sorry, but they slaughter the lamb, but it's not really a sacrifice, right? It's which is why it's traditionally not slaughtered on the actual mizbeach, on the altar, but it was traditionally slaughtered in the courtyard of the temple. So that's why it could technically be done anywhere in old Jerusalem. I mean, with Jerusalem 2,000 years ago was a little smaller than the old city we have in Jerusalem today. And everything we call New Jerusalem nowadays wasn't technically part of Jerusalem. So that is what I've learned, that, you know, we're not allowed to offer any type of sacrifices outside of Jerusalem, but the Passover sacrifice doesn't have to be offered on the actual altar, but anywhere in Jerusalem proper, which means anywhere within the walls of Jerusalem. So technically today, people could be sacrificing lambs. I think it came out in Haaretz that someone offered or slaughtered a lamb in Jerusalem this year, and it was recorded.
Yeah. Rabbi Gab was talking. Sorry, yeah, it was like a week ago. They did a test run, and everything went fine. And then everybody, then the police went in and grabbed everybody's land. They went to their houses and found out who they were, and took their lambs so they wouldn't be able to do it on Pesach. Go ahead. I'm sorry. But yeah, they did.
But offering it on the Temple Mount, I think that's the controversial thing, at least with the Arabs or the Muslims there, right? But first of all, we don't actually have an altar there. We're not sure where the altar would be. I remember last time I lived there, they would allow Jews to go very early in the morning, from like, I think 7 in the morning to 8:30, to walk on top of the Temple Mount. There's a big debate on if you're even allowed to be up there. The Rambam says no, the Ravid says yes. But for those who want to go, I mean, they tell them to, go to the mikveh first, and they give them a map on where you could stand, and where everyone agrees you can't stand, right? And that's, I mean, it's actually not under exactly the Dome of the Rock, but it extends a little farther. There's actually like a little hut there, like another little pointed building there. I mean, it's not the Mosque of Omar, but it's between the Mosque of Omar and the Dome of the Rock, where they say that the actual altar stood in front of the Holy of Holies or whatever, But yeah, it's a courtyard where it was traditionally done. Yeah. But I hopped in your discussion a little bit late, and that's all I got.
No, Ross is due back in here. Gab's coming. People come and go. I was just really shocked to see the lengths that the state went through to stop it from happening. Like you say, it's not an actual. I mean, they call it the Passover sacrifice, or Passover offering. Okay, they call it an offering. I contended this a while back when we were reading it in the Parsha. It's like no other. It's like no offering ever explained ever again or before. This is one where you take the lamb and you eat it. You actually consume it. The whole family in their house,
right,
in bondage, ate it. It's like
there are other sacrifices that's also consumed. I think the shlamim is also eaten by the person bringing it, apart from the meat that's typically consumed by the Kohanim. But yeah, well, even till today, the Samaritans, I mean, they've been doing it. I'm not sure if the Samaritans that exist today are actual descendants of the Samaritans that existed way back then. But
they're allowed.
Well, I mean, we're allowed to technically. I mean, don't forget, we had the Temple Mount in '67, and we gave it to the Arabs. So, I mean, it's not that that we're oppressed in any way. That we're not up there because we don't want to be up there. I mean, honestly, I don't want to be up there because if we're up there, like we get a chance to build another temple. I mean, who's going to be in charge, right? Satmar, Chabad. I mean, who's really going to be calling the shots? Like in Israel, I'm glad there's a separation of church and state.
Well, people wouldn't even agree on where the temple should be.
Right. Well, right. There has to be some clear divine intervention there. But I think that as long as we keep the laws that already exist, we'll be good. I mean, people think that we need another Sanhedrin, we need another temple there, to like create laws or do away with old laws. For example, the laws of the Agunot of like, women who can't get divorced and this and that. But if we just kept the laws that were on the books, I mean, I think that would be enough for us to would deserve a redemption. But I mean, people are never going to be happy with the status quo. I mean, they're always going to want to change. They're always going to, This is why. I have a video called Mashiach Later. I mean, honestly, I just with this new Sanhedrin, where they tried to like reestablish a new Sanhedrin, and the head of the Sanhedrin, at least 5 years ago, it was a very famous Chabad rabbi. It's like, I don't know if I'm happy, Israel resembling Iran and the mullahs, right? I mean, I like it with the secular government. I mean, I like that we have the freedom to be religious, to not be religious. Fine. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Well, it allows all nations to, I mean, you have Catholics there, of all people.
Oh, that's another thing. I mean, you have very religious Jews there who are adamant about wanting to eliminate idolaters, right? And the question is, what's an idolater nowadays? And also they've reinterpreted. I mean, you're familiar with Shemitah, the whole Shemitah year. So, like, in order to be able to survive in the country, they sell half the country to the Arabs, because it's a later understanding that an Arab falls under the rubric of a ger toshav, and this is not technically true. I mean, an Arab doesn't really worship, or I'm sorry, a Muslim, but doesn't really worship your God. I mean, this is one thing I speak about all the time, that only because you're a monotheist doesn't mean you're not an idolater, right? I mean, if you only worship Zeus, right?
Shituf.
Right. I mean, well, yeah, but Shituf means partnerships, so that's more than one. But if you only worship Zeus, I mean, that makes you a monotheist, but that does not mean you're not an idolater. So, I mean, you could technically be a monotheist and an idolater at the same time. So I think we know the God that we worship by what he expects from us. And I think the God of the Muslims expects something different than what the God of Israel expects. So, but anyways, I mean, I think it was Rav Kook who introduced this idea that Muslims fall under the rubric of a ger toshav, just because it was very convenient not to, I don't know, like plant all your crops outside of the ground, which is one way. I mean, like hydroponics is one way to get around the whole Shemitah year. In Israel, they have these. Right. I mean, whole parts of Israel that they plant on elevated ground, right? And like that, you're not actually planting in the ground, and you're able to eat the meat of the Shemitah year. But I mean, you're technically allowed to eat it also. Like, I mean, this is not. I mean, I'm not of the opinion that current day Israel is a resurrection of biblical Israel. I mean, it's a secular country, right? But for those who want to carve out a little piece of Israel, I mean, when I lived in Israel, I was for the state of Judea. I'm not sure if you were familiar with this movement, right?
I'm not.
The religious Jews in Yehuda v'Shomron, where they wanted to secede from mainland Israel and create their own country, a religious country. And it was mainly the people used to follow Meir Kahana, like in Kfar Tapuach, and the hilltop settlers. And they had their own flag. And this was big after the whole Gush Katif thing, right? I mean, all the religious Zionists became disillusioned with the current government. I mean, the average religious Zionist, they support the state of Israel, right? I mean, they even serve in the military. But when the state of Israel made a thrust to destroy all the settlements, or, you know, I mean, all the controversial settlements, many people used to support the state in the Shtachim, you know, like out there, what people call the Green Line. They wanted to do their own thing.
They want to take back the land of Judea.
Right, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, in Israel, I mean, most people don't know that the majority of people who live in Israel are not religious. I mean, people won't know that unless they leave Jerusalem. If you leave Jerusalem, I mean, like, right when you get off the bus in Tel Aviv, first thing you see is like pork hanging from the, and, you know, I mean, Russians love their pork, you know, and it's where, you know, so people, it's funny when you see Messianics in their synagogues and they're dancing with Israeli flags. I'm like, whoa, you know, I mean, don't forget that the people who founded that country, Israel was actually founded to be a communist country, which is why
Bolshevik.
Right, the vast majority of its little towns that were kibbutzim, which are socialist enclaves. And when they realized that these things weren't working out, and they all started becoming bankrupt, and they dropped that form of socialism, which is why Stalin turned their back on them, and became democratic. You know, I mean, I wish they would have learned this lesson like before the Russian Revolution. I mean, most people don't know the Jewish involvement of that with the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. And I mean, Jews were responsible for communism. Not religious Jews, of course, but secular Jews. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad to be living in America. Most people don't know that it's not fun to live in Israel. I mean, not for too long. I mean, not as an American. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the next best thing we're going to get is liberty. Until Mashiach comes, until we can get this straight, and liberty is the best way to go. You know, and I understand. You know, I would, idol smasher. I would like to smash some idols too. Okay, I would, but if you know, but at the same time, the fact that, you know, a house for all nations, a nation of priests and whatnot. If, you know, there are people who are passionate about God, they might have a partner, and there are what would appear to be idolatrous behavior in certain churches. It's the fact that everybody can be there, and it's kind of proof. I know that there's problems in Israel and whatnot, but in America, at least, it's proof that we can have the Jew, the Muslim, the atheist, the pagan, you know, witchy girl up the road. You know, everybody can live well and can prosper and make money and raise their kids in relative safety until Mashiach.
Israel has a different form of violence than America does. In Israel, you could actually sleep with your door open. I mean, it's just, I mean, you may get stabbed in the corner, you know, but it's a different type of violence. I mean, it's much more dangerous in America than it is in Israel. I mean, depending where you live. If you live in Montana, perhaps not. But if you live in New York City, it's a different type of danger. I mean, in Israel's very left wing. Israel's known for, I mean, they take your kids away for nothing, right? Just Israeli culture is upside down. The women are very masculine. The men are very feminine. I mean, don't let all those images, fool you. Like, I mean, the best Israeli soldiers are not Israelis, technically. They're Russians and Ethiopians, right? You know, there's a lot of, I mean, most people don't know anything about Israel, and it's not, you know, I mean, it's very backwards. Even the right-wing politicians over there, like, don't even include things like abortion but they don't run on these topics, but they don't, because they don't interest individuals, because even the Orthodox Jews in Israel are typically pro-abortion. Most people don't know this. Most Orthodox Jews in Israel, they believe in this dual income family, right? I mean, as a conservative American, I'm thinking like, all right, the man works, the woman stays home. No, well, they'll laugh at you in Israel if you do that, right? Because most that's what happens like when you lead a Kiruv movement, an outreach movement that just tries to change the way you behave and not the way you think. So you have a lot of people who hold a lot of left-wing ideas who are Jewish and Orthodox, right? I mean, it's completely upside down. I mean, this is why, I mean, I try to encourage Christians to leave Christianity and become Jewish, because they bring something to the table. I mean, there's something great that was created in this country, in America, this right-wing conservative way of thinking that really doesn't exist in Israel. It just doesn't, you know. Yeah, I mean, I think the best Jew, I think a former Messianic makes the best Jew, fortunately. I mean, you know, I mean,
I read that from Jews, from other Jews, excuse me.
I mean, they'd call me an anti-Semite if I wasn't, you know, but if I didn't convert to Judaism already, you know, but most people who leave Christianity, you know, and become Jewish, they romanticize Jewish culture. And I'm sorry to say, Jewish culture is inferior to North American Christian culture in terms of how families are raised, you know, like the whole waspy culture. They don't know. I mean, now, I'm a former U.S. Army paratrooper infantryman. I love
Hoorah!
America. Well, yeah. What'd you say? Hoorah or hooah?
Hoorah! Well, I'm just.
Because you're Marines. All right.
I carry this with me wherever I go. I'm not even military, and I was given this by a good man.
All right. So typically, when you show that, I have to buy you a beer, because that's your.
I'll take it.
The military coin, when you throw that on the table, you know, but the other person buys the rounds for everybody. But yeah, I mean, we shouldn't cut short the culture of where we came from, and it's not necessarily. I mean, I've seen a lot of people convert to Judaism or adopt some sort of Jewish existence, and automatically, you know, the women, you know, I mean, they try to emulate like with the Yiddish bubby, and, you know, like they sound like Barbra Streisand, and they try to be a little like overwhelming and hysterical. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. As a matter of fact, and people don't like when I praise Christians or, you know, a lot, but it seems that if you follow the biblical narrative, the Christian emulates the Christian today. I'm not saying, all right, or perhaps the Christian of 50 years ago emulates our biblical heroes a lot more than Jews nowadays. I mean, think about it. I mean, Jews nowadays do exactly what they shouldn't be doing. I mean, Jews in Torah are known for complaining a lot, right? And this frustrates the Creator. And for some reason, Jews today are synonymous with people who complain a lot. I mean, you figure we'd learn our lesson, right? So this is why I could tell when someone's a convert, or I can tell when someone had just a different upbringing, you know, because he brings something new and fresh to the table. And it sounds bad to say, but it sounds like almost like washing out the bad blood, right? And it's you know,
there's been a divide between the world and Judaism and the Jewish people. I mean, no one had a choice for hundreds of years, and now we have an opportunity. You know?
Right. Yeah, thank God. I mean, with the age of information, you know, to learn. I mean, I'm a former Christian myself. I converted over 18 years ago. After I converted, I moved to Israel. I learned in yeshiva. I was an Aish. I was an Or Sameach, and then I got married there, and I lived there for 5 years. And yeah, but I came back to America, man. There's no place. But I mean, like
we get the opportunity.
No place like home, and honestly, and when they ask me, like, am I a Jew first or an American first, and I say that I'm an American first, but a Jew specifically. You know, I don't think it should. No, that's not my answer. I'm actually quoting Dennis Prager, and Prager uses that line, right? I mean, this whole thing that people. I mean, I think if someone cares about Israel more than they care about America, they should just move there.
Yeah. It's calm down.
And they've done that. You know, I mean, they've done just that. I mean, they've moved there, and it's a great thing. I mean, as a matter of fact, this is why Israelis are a little tougher than Americans because all the tough Jews, they went to Israel. But
a different kind of violence.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there hasn't been a bus bombing for a while. I mean, when I was in yeshiva there back in the day, I mean, Jerusalem, the Intifada, it was wild. You're telling me, but yeah, I mean, bus bombings like every other day. The Sbarro pizza bombing, like all these things. I don't know. It's weird, you know. You figure where they had more success with the bus bombings, and they moved over I mean, like to the stabbing attacks. It's clearly less successful, for them. But yeah, Muslims are weird people over there. It's kind of, you know, I mean, they're so numerous. You figure that if they actually got their things together, and they could actually hurt the Jews. But it's just, I mean, the Jews always outsmart them. You know, it's just.
Jews are smart like that. They're just
yeah. Well, they say that. What do you say that? Well, I don't want to. See, I don't want to bash on Jews so much. I mean,
well, if you are. It's the thing that always bothered me, and I'm an outsider. And I'm not fond of my own government. I love my country. I detest my government. And I noticed throughout my learnings that, you know, the Israeli state is pretty much a combination of progressive Europeanism, if you will. It's pretty much a European-based government mixed with old 800-year-old Ottoman law. It's like a conglomeration, you know, a weird mix. Because when you say that they're very liberal, that makes a lot of sense considering how, you know, Europe is very liberal, and after the, you know, World War II, they've been very, you know, they do everything they can to prove they're not racist, you know.
Right.
which backfires, and good, it should. But that's, you know, that's where it came from. It's very European, very, you know, UN-ish.
Well, Israel doesn't actually have a death penalty. I mean, I think the only person ever put to death in Israel was Eichmann. But that's also, I mean, they offer their soldiers 2 free abortions every year. I mean, it's pretty liberal. I mean, it's way to the left of.
That's disgusting.
Right. Well, it's a secular country. You know,
that's at least in America we fight it. We don't offer our soldiers. What the heck?
Right.
Oh man. Oh man. Oh, I need to go over there and bust some heads. Someone needs to get drop kicked over there. What the heck?
It's not an issue over there. Abortion's not an issue. I mean, to the average Jew. I mean, so the thing is, there's actually, you know, because I asked about this. I mean, I have a video. I mean, I think this is the first video online speaking about this. It's called Judaism Calls Abortion Murder. And I was just bringing sources down. But there's a rabbi's name is the Yavitz, Rabbi Yaakov Emden. And now technically we know that a woman could have an abortion to save her life, or if her life's in danger. That no one would deny. But he was of the opinion that a woman could have an abortion if her health is in danger.
Right.
So this has opened up a whole new era of the level of discussion, whether you have women saying, if you don't let me have an abortion, I mean, I'm going to go nuts, or I'm going to go crazy, this and that. So nowadays, rabbis use that heter from the Yavitz to allow women to have abortions, and it's practiced in the Orthodox world. I mean, I lived in a yeshuv called Kohav HaShachar, and there, I mean, it was a common, a common shita, a common opinion. So, I mean, most people don't speak about this. I mean, the vast majority of rabbis are against abortion, but I guess when there's a rabbinic there's a halachic way. Unfortunately, but yeah, but in that sense, I guess Christians are still to the right of Orthodox Jews in terms of micro politics.
Well, they had a chance to spread out. Nobody in history ever had that opportunity. Indians and settlers, mountaineers, you know, Being from the Midwest, or most of my life being from the Midwest, there's a whole different way of thinking. Where, yeah, you can leave your car door unlocked. You can leave your house unlocked. It's a much friendlier place. And, when you have the opportunity to start fresh as a people, you're going to get a healthier society. It's only proof that when you let people be good, there's a good chance they'll be good.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, Israel is built like from the top down. I mean, don't forget, I mean, the country was almost created in a way to fight against God. And that, look, I'm a Zionist, okay? I'm just not a religious Zionist. In other words, I believe that Israel has a right to exist, and I believe that Jews have the right to live in the land of Israel, sure. But if someone's going to claim that the inhabitants of the land of Israel are in some way the resurrection of biblical Israel, then, I mean, we see God punish Israel biblically for a lot less than what Israelis do today. Now, I'm not saying Israelis are evil or any more wicked than any other people in a democratic country. But I mean, you can't claim to be biblical Israel reborn and in some way claim that God is on your side today, right? I mean, even the Holocaust, let's say Israel is a direct result of what occurred in Europe, right? I mean, the nations wouldn't have voted to allow the country to be born if it wasn't for what Hitler did. Okay, but it seems
sad but true.
Yeah, I mean, but it seems that the country is there in some way to fight against God, because we know, look, in Torah teaches us that when Israel suffers in the collective, I'm not saying individually, right? I mean, people suffer for many different reasons, but it seems that virtually every time that Israel suffers in the collective, it's because of something Israel did, right? And now, I mean, it seems like the purpose of Zionism was to create a state to keep Jews safe, but keep Jews safe from who? I guess from God, right? I mean, but in the collective sense, this is why, I mean, I like Israel, and I mean, it's very convenient to have a falafel stand on every corner, and I mean, Shabbos and Yerushalayim is amazing, and this and that, but it's kind of, it's almost like calling upon themselves a death sentence if they keep on trying to identify with biblical Israel. What they should do is say, look, that we're a secular country, right, populated mainly by Jews, but we're not in any way trying to walk in the boots of biblical Israel. Because, I mean, then God would have to show that he's consistent.
It's left up to the Jews to be religious when they get there. It's a safe haven. It's basically just a haven.
Right.
Right.
But that's what it was created to be. But it's actually the most dangerous. I mean, it's the most dangerous country for Jews to live in anywhere in the world. I mean, think about it. All you need is perhaps 2 nuclear weapons to destroy this country the size of the state of New Jersey. Right. This is why I'm a secular Zionist. I'm not a religious Zionist. Because religiously, I would have to believe that it's a resurrection of biblical Israel, but it seems that I'd be doing them a disservice by elevating them to that level, because then God would have to judge them on that level, and they're not ready for that type of judgment. I mean,
it's a
Bibi Netanyahu is a secular Jew. I mean, people don't know this. He's a secular Jew. 54% of all ethnic Jews are atheists. Right? I mean, even in the U.S. I mean, in the U.S., the leading atheists are all Jewish. Richard Dawkins, with the late Carl Sagan, the late Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris. I mean, these are all Jews, ethnic Jews, of course, not religious Jews. But it's. This is why, like, I'm not so big on people praising people just because they happen to have Jewish blood, right? I mean, I think that the Almighty, he judges us by what we believe and how those beliefs guide our behavior interactions, whether you're Jewish or not, right? Between Jew and non-Jew, but between decent and indecent. And I think God does so as well. But
modern Israel is like an opportunity.
absolutely, right. And it's almost a missed opportunity. But 70 years, and for sure, I mean, it's a democracy, it's an ally in the fight against terror. But biblically, I mean, it seems, it's like that statement that Christians use all the time, that if God doesn't destroy this city, I mean, he's going to have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. But I mean, that's the price of having a democracy. And I love Israel, but I just hope it kind of remains secular. I mean, don't forget, the religious ones in Israel, at least with the Haredim, don't serve in the military. I mean, don't really contribute. I mean, they send their women to work while they learn all day. Now, mind you, that's a new thing. That's a new thing. In Europe, they didn't do this. I mean, this actually was created about 100 years ago by in Kovna, this whole notion of the kollel. But 200 years ago, even 150 years ago, every Jew had to try to earn their living. I mean, nowadays, if you just wake up in Jerusalem and go to the bus stop and see who's there, right? I mean, it's Arabs and women. Because the men are in air-conditioned rooms learning all day, right? I mean, this is not the way it's supposed to be.
It's a modern luxury. Today we have automation. Today we have the ability to do this.
Well, I mean, if they had the ability, they wouldn't be sending their wives to work. I mean, in Israel, these women, I mean, you're telling me what these women have, like 10 to 12 kids. They have to cook for Shabbos, and they still have to bring in the money. Well, not to mention that these guys, they actually nullify their ketubah, which tells them that they have to provide for their wife, by having their women, support them. It's completely upside down. Now, this is not done in the religious Zionist world. This is only done in the Litvish Haredi world, right? But it's kind of like, the most learned individuals in the country don't really contribute to the country, which is, it doesn't speak well for religious Zionism.
There is a plus side, though. The Jews are coming home in droves compared to what they've done the past few thousand years.
Right. Right.
That's good.
What do you mean they're coming home in droves?
Well, people. I mean, even well, the Yemenites, weren't they lifted out? Were they like airlifted out? They finally came home. They've been
okay. So you mean they're coming home to Israel? Right.
Well, home, yeah, promised land. They're home. King David paid cash. End of story. It's legally theirs. They're coming. Yeah, that's a plus if it takes a secular democracy, and even to allow the Christian and Muslim to work together, to live together in this place while we're doing it, while we're bringing everybody home. It's going to take a few generations, I'm sure. Unless something big happens that the world can't deny, then yeah, but if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. I'm all for it. If it takes a secular democracy, then I'll stand there too. I don't like the fact that abortion's legal there. I don't like forcing people into the military. I never liked that. One thing I love about my country is that although there is a push to get children to join the military by requirement, when you reach 18, you graduate high school, you go right into the Army, you serve 2 years and you're done. And a lot of people are behind that. I am not, by any means. If your Army isn't voluntary, I don't think it's nearly as sincere.
Well, I mean, in that country, just to give them the benefit of the doubt, if you don't have a forced military, you don't have a military. And especially, it's surrounded by hostiles. I agree that they should be forced to some type of service. So in Israel, they have something called Sharut Leumi, which means it means like civil service. That if you don't want to serve, like you could volunteer in a hospital, you could pick up trash on the street, right? But you shouldn't be forced to carry a rifle if you don't want to carry a rifle. I just saw this good movie, Hacksaw Ridge, right? But you should do your part, and I believe that anyone living in the land of Israel should support their home. Anywhere you live, not just the land of Israel. It's just
Civic duty.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Like that.
they live off the government, and they trust me. I mean, if someone invades, they're going to look to the army. They're going to look to the police. You know, I mean.
So I can get a pork sandwich in Israel.
Yes.
I go to Tel Aviv.
Not just Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem.
Look for the Russian.
I mean, there's a famous Chinese restaurant right on Yaffo Street. I remember I walked in right there. I mean, like probably it's probably 2 minutes from Ben Yehuda, like 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes from Shar Yaffo. I walked in on the second floor, Chinese restaurant. I looked, they had shrimp, they had pork. I mean, not that I believe that it should be banned, right?
Right.
Like I said, I'm happy it being secular, right? Just because.
It's a price, though, right?
Well, you know,
maybe
non-kosher food is more expensive than kosher food in Israel because it's supply and demand. You know, so for you to want to eat non-kosher food, you're going to really want to eat non-kosher food. So it's almost like a delicacy. Because not even the Muslims eat pork, you know. It's but they do eat shrimp, by the way. Although I think that Shiites don't. But like there aren't any Shiites in Israel.
I'm not sure if I can really, blame the Arabs for getting upset. I mean, they let all these Jews back into the country, or all these Jews come back into the country, and they got pork.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think their biggest thing, at least in Jerusalem, is the yearly gay parade. That one thing that the religious and the religious Jews and religious Arabs actually will get together to protest every year. And this is something. Now, mind you, Israel or Jerusalem has a very, very tiny gay population, right? But people fly in from all over to make a statement. I remember back then, I mean, they wanted to even walk when I was there. I mean, they wanted to take the parade into the old city. I mean,
it's pushing it just a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, democracy comes with a price. I mean, it comes with a price, but this isn't really democracy. Right, because again, the homosexual population is so tiny, right? I mean, it's really more of a slap in the face. If anything, it's those on the left trying to push their agenda. I mean, it's not in terms of democracy, because in Jerusalem, like I said, the vast majority of people who live in Jerusalem are religious. So. Because there's tons of gay parades. There's more than one a year in Tel Aviv and in Haifa. I mean, but Tel Aviv was just voted the gay capital of the world.
I heard that. I was like, oh man.
Yeah,
Do you think there's a healthy thing to it because of I mean, where we live in a society now that if you find another man to be beautiful, not that you want to have sex with them, but if you just love a man, it's always that football fag, I'll say it, queer bashing, where they, guys in pickup trucks. I've come from Texas, it wasn't unknown for, rednecks in pickup trucks go down to the gay part of Dallas and just whack every guy they saw on Oak Lawn, or
yeah, they don't do that in Israel. I mean, that's not. I mean, Jews are very open-minded. I mean, they may shun you in the Haredi world, but in terms of violence, it's not.
Do you think maybe because especially for Noahide law, the sexual laws are a bit more liberal than the stiff Puritan, missionary or you burn in hell forever mentality that might be passed on in the Western world? Maybe they need time to. People need time to do this. I just, I'm trying to find a positive way out of this. Is I guess trying to find it.
Well, it's a secular country. I mean, there's no positive way out of it. Like my best friend is actually a gay Orthodox Jew who, doesn't practice that lifestyle, but has the urges. He speaks about it. He makes videos about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I sympathize with people who have those urges and who ultimately overcome them or make some attempt to.
Yeah, it's not really about it's about the action itself, and even that you have to have three judges witness it, or three witnesses see it happen. You know, Jonathan and David loved each other beyond all bounds. I use this. Like, why do we call it gay marriage? Why isn't it same sex marriage? Maybe, Bert and Ernie, who sleep in separate beds, should be allowed to share wealth, should be allowed to visit each other in the hospital after visiting ours.
Right.
That kind of mentality. Maybe
I actually have a different understanding of what the Bible tries to tell us on this. I have a video. Does Judaism hate gays?
Yeah.
And now, in Torah, it's funny. Right when it calls a man laying with another man a toeva, in abomination, this is in the same vicinity or immediately after. It speaks of a man laying with a beast as he lays with a woman, also as an abomination. Now, this tells me that it's not the homosexuality that people struggle with nowadays, which in the vast majority of cases is the result of either molestation, some sort of trauma that occurred in the child's life. But it seems whether this was a form of homosexuality that was prevalent in early Greek societies, almost like gratuitous homosexuality, right? I mean, in Greek society, it was the norm to have a woman for procreation and a child to get your kicks off, right? And now, does it mean that all these individuals were actually attracted to boys, or was something, or was due to experimentation, right? So I think what the Torah is telling us there is that just like someone is not in any way naturally attracted to a beast, and it calls for the death penalty for that act, this death penalty, like for those who engage with individuals of the same sex, is also for individuals not attracted in any way, physically attracted to gay men and still sleep with him. Now, I believe that the homosexuality that's prevalent today, these people have no choice, right? I mean, you can't convince a guy who finds hairy, or like hairy legs sexy not to. It's just not. It's
what he is. That's what gets him. That's his thing. Yeah.
Right. So then, but it seems that the Torah in some way may offer some leeway for that type of individual, for people who are emotionally, I don't want to use the word sick, but has some sort of emotional hurdle to deal with that. Hey, you know what? I mean, they're just not attracted to women compared to the homosexuality that was prevalent. And of course, Israelites back then would have known of this type of homosexuality because it was even required for many idols, right? But to do things that didn't come natural, that for some reason those who are emotionally traumatized today can't seem to shake off. So that's just my understanding. I know there's many people, and when they have people close to them who happen to live or be homosexual, but they just toss the commandment away and say, you know what, this was it's not applicable anymore. God has common sense and this and that. I mean, I think that's the wrong attitude, right? I mean, instead of trying to say whether this commandment is not applicable anymore, we have to just try to explain it in a different manner. I mean, because God's commandments are always applicable, right? I mean, it was wrong then, it's wrong today, right? But perhaps we could look at it in a different fashion and not just say, I've met people who love God and love Torah. I mean, even there's a Christian organization called Journey to Manhood, of Christians who struggle with homosexual desires and they really want to serve God and they force themselves to marry women. I mean, these are giants. For us to say that God in some way would call for their death, it's just, I think that the issue has to be discussed a little further. It's
we certainly can't do with closets in society. I don't think that we can address the issue.
Mhm.
And I do honestly, you said trauma, and that's the best word for what a lot of children are going through, particularly, and this is where the West is sick. This is the sickness of the West, particularly in the sexual realm. Children, and it's a transgenerational thing. It just doesn't stop. It's going to be difficult to make that stop. And when you force people in a closet to have to marry and have children and carry on that bad seed, if you will, throughout the generations, I mean, we've got a problem in this. And I'm not real big on sexualizing yourself in public, but I can't say I'm not sympathetic. And might make me something, people might say I'm weird, but I can't say I'm not sympathetic, only because we have a problem. And the sooner we address it, that this is where, damn it, we're people, we're here.
There you go.
Then
we did that too good.
They're human beings, and if we don't start treating them as such, we're never going to fix. And just because they're gay don't mean they're stupid, y'all out there who might think I'm weird. These aren't stupid people. They know there's some sick shit going on in the world. It's particularly with children. So if we don't address this stuff openly and honestly, we'll never be able to deal with it as a society, as a people, particularly in a free nation, of the most charitable nation, America. Pretty charitable people. I think we can. But we need to address it healthfully. Oh, I know. How you doing, Alan? Welcome. Ross, it's good to see you came back. How are you this fine Thursday, sir? Are you there?
I'm here. I'm fine. I just finished some Jamaican jerk chicken, Jamaican sweetbread, and Jamaican rice.
Oh. You got some rum, man? Ayari, man. Got some rum?
Indeed, I do.
Take it, man. The spirit of Jah, they say.
I wanted to see if we could take this opportunity and correct me or just set me straight if I'm just out of line here. But maybe we should take a few minutes to kind of clear up the bad blood between you, the idol smasher, and Asher Meza.
Pick on my rabbi. I gotta make this. I'm gonna beat my chest, and I'm gonna flail around a little bit.
No,
I'm going to chomp at you. Alan knows me too.
I bet that you and I agree more than we disagree.
I know we do. I've been subscribed to your channel for years, dude. I've listened to you for a long time. Yeah, we do.
I mean, this is all, I run this like a business, and I'm not trying to make money in any way, but I try to be effective in my messages, and sometimes I come off a little abrasive, and that's and just because it gets the message out, not because I'm trying to really bash anyone here. Now there are like a few people I bash just because I do that as a reaction to the way that people treat me in my videos, and as you know, I'm just a character that many people like to hate. It's funny, I just saw an article that they sent me that Rabbi Chlorophene put out yesterday, that he blatantly said it. Something that he's been running around for a while, and he basically said that it's wrong to convert to Judaism. But did you see this article?
Yes, I did.
Right? Were you shocked in any way?
I posted a very, very strong attack against that blog. I put the blog up, and I said my opinion of it. He really laid his cards out on that, especially where he speaks of 9 of 10 rabbis would say this. He's saying something else, and his attack against the construct of Talmudic Judaism. I don't understand the attacks that people have against the Talmud,
I don't think he attacked
I just don't
Talmud.
understand it.
I mean, you know what? He's actually being very consistent. Okay, now this is not. It doesn't help my argument much here, but he actually has been pushing the Noahide movement for many years. I mean, if people know Rabbi Chlorophene from the Path of the Righteous Gentile, I mean, he has laid the foundation for the Noahide movement that exists today. Now, if anyone takes the Noahide movement seriously, but they would have to conclude with what he said. Now, people who know my work know that I don't really take the Noahide movement too seriously. In other words, I don't even think that the average rabbi actually takes the Noahide movement as serious as Rabbi Chlorophene does. But if they did, they would have to conclude that, you know what, you can't offer a people a standard and in any way expect them to either stay down or feel like they're second-class citizens in any way, right? I mean, it's in people's nature to overcome in some way, right? You know, it's kind of like nowadays we have the deaf community actually coming out saying that they're actually proud to be deaf and they don't want to be able to hear, right? I mean, they've created a crutch where it didn't exist before. And I've always said that if anyone's ultimately going to take the Noahide and now the Ger movement seriously, they would actually have to tolerate a religion that's not going to, or a movement that's not going to sit around for scraps, but a movement that's going to want to either be on the same level of Judaism or superior to it. Right? I mean, it seems that a lot more time passed in Torah from Exodus 20, to Genesis 1 than afterwards, So, I mean, you have people walking around saying that Adam was a ger, that Avram Avinu was a ger, that Shem. I mean, you automatically have a bigger army than people in some way proclaiming.
He argues that King David is a ger.
Right. Okay. So this is now. I'll tell you what. With the average rabbi that has pushed in any way the Noahide movement never really took it seriously. He thought, you know what, this is never going to take off, and the only reason we push it is to kind of keep Gentiles away from Judaism, right, or give them some sort of alternative. But you know what? It's growing. It's growing, and that's what makes me nervous because I think that this is how Christianity took off, right? Christianity, or at least Pauline Christianity, really arose as some sort of Ger Noahide movement. I mean, of course, lahavdil. I mean, it's not the same thing exactly, but some sort of Ger Noahide movement in the time or after the death of Jesus. And
I never saw that. That's a new thing on me that I haven't been able to wrap my head around. I never really thought of it that way.
It eventually grew so big, but that it ended up persecuting Jews, right? I remember I used to have a channel online called eYeshiva, and on there, I'd have an individual. His name was Roger Grattan. Do you know him?
I don't know the name.
Whatever happened to that guy?
Right. So he actually had smicha from the Sanhedrin to be a Noahide judge, or to be, I mean, he was up there in the Noahide movement. He came out, I remember when I was living in Israel, he made a video. I mean, he came out in Israeli news because he offered a Noahide sacrifice, which is pretty much like a barbecue, right? But in the land of Israel, saying that, hey, we're here, we're back, and we're offering sacrifices, and we're, claiming our place in history. But he actually was of the opinion that not just was the Noahide movement an alternative to Judaism, it was ultimately superior to Judaism.
I went out to dinner with him. Gosh, I guess it was about 10 years ago. He came down to Florida when I was living in. I can't remember if I was in. I think it was in Fort Myers at the time, and we went out to eat, and we had a really long, about 4 or 5 hour conversation. And he was talking about that, about his big plan to offer sacrifices. And my whole point was, why?
I don't understand I never understood in Kalinda, you know, the story of Kalinda, where Adam offered sacrifices for 8 days, thinking the world was coming to an end. I never got a straight answer from anybody. The closest thing I got to a straight answer was when they said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Pray."
Yeah, but it was a medrash, right? God. I mean, it's not in the Torah that I mean, he thought the world was coming to an end. I mean, this is my whole basis for telling people
the story.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. You know, so like midrashim in the Talmud are known as agadata, right? You know, midrashim outside of the Talmud are known as, you know, midrashim. Yeah. But my whole basis of saying that, you know what, if someone wants to keep Torah, I mean, if someone has been identifying with Israel for so long that they should just convert, is on the basis that everything that Noahides accept as true, like fall under the rubric of what's known as folklore and legend in Judaism. In other words, it's not scripture. Now, I'm not saying it's completely disposable, but I'm also saying that, I mean, it's not necessarily true, right? And it's just safer. It's safer that if someone is seeking a relationship with God.
It's a science of thoughts, what it is. It's a whole different, it's not halacha. It's not.
It's like parables. It's to describe things that are beyond the story.
Right. I mean, if it's just a parable, like, where were you praying about it? I mean, why are you trying to, like, brainstorm this idea? I mean, if you know that it's just a story.
Because it's good for the brain. I think people like me, I always had a mystical sense. That's what attracted me to Judaism in the first place, when I was way out there, far out, man. But it centered me. And I think that there is a special breed of people who kind of need that mental gymnastics to do better. And it's just nice that it's there. Right? That's what brought me to it. But my interests aren't Kabbalistic. You know, my interests are the raw, what is practical, what is now.
You know, Jews nowadays, I mean, wouldn't even eat a hot dog if it's not from, like, the highest, you know, tashkacha, like highest authority. They leave nothing to chance, right? I mean, everything is what if, you know, why not, whatever. Do you think a Jew would build his whole eternity on parables, legends, folklore, or on something a little more trustworthy? In other words, Jews are paranoid on the smallest things, right? I mean, they have to be as sure. I mean, most insurance companies, most insurers are typically Jewish individuals, you know, because they want something secure as religion can be, right? So, I mean, the average Jew, I mean, I think if they found out that their mother wasn't Jewish, God forbid, or their grandmother wasn't Jewish, I think they would convert to Judaism. And they wouldn't, you know, because they'd be able to know, like, hey, I mean, these tales and legends are nice, but on a pedestal, they don't compare to actually what appears in Torah, right? You know, now,
Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, the reason it's hard for my movement to defeat the Ger movement is because the Ger movement is not made up, right? A Ger Toshav does appear in Torah, right? It's not like defeating Mormonism. I mean, it's not like defeating Islam. See, the question that arises is that, do we know enough about this movement, about these individuals, to build anything off of when we have Judaism already? That's my question. And I think that the basis of idolatry is wasting our biggest commodity, which is our time. You know, so I mean, for someone to devote so much of their life to a movement that is built off of Adam receiving a scroll,
it's not really
from an angel.
I never took it as the basis when I read the book. I took it as this is a parable telling you whatever it was, Adam received a Torah. Noah received the Torah. Obviously, Shem, there was something passed down. Okay, I get it's a legend, and I get that it's a legend. I got that. I don't think anybody would base their eternity on that. I would hope nobody would base their eternity
the
on
book
that.
clearly describes these things as something that happened.
Yeah, that's what's said, and he cites his sources, and it's all there. It's not like it's a foreign thing.
But his sources are really kind of, they're on the fringe of the midrash.
That's okay. The thing I'm going to get back to Chlorphene's.
Even if it was according to the midrash, it's still a midrash.
Let me get to real quick, because I've been wanting to get to that. I think what Chlorphene is saying needs to be said. It is interesting to me that before the Roman before Rome really pulled what they pulled, there was a time when Jews would actually proselytize. They would go out and teach people to behave for God's sake. There's an opportunity for the Jews to do that now. There's been a thing about conversion. There's been a thing about conversion as a religious thing. And what I think people are craving in the world, who aren't Jewish, who aren't born into it, are craving something that's already there for them. The Creator is already there, but they're not looking to. And when they're told they have to fully convert to Judaism, get circumcised or poked, they would be joining a community. The only reason they convert, in my opinion, is because you're getting married. And I can see when you say be Jewish, it's like, just go for it. At least there's somebody in Torah who is able to live in the land with the Jewish people, make money, have children, be prosperous, and be respected in the community, maybe even at one point even sit at a Passover sacrifice or offer, the Passover Seder, a real one. That there are a people in Torah that don't have to marry into being the bride of God, because being the bride of God is very special, and it's not supposed to be for everybody. Who are the Jews teaching themselves? It's not an echo chamber. Torah is supposed to go out into the universe. It's supposed to, encompass the earth like water. Not all people can become Jewish, but there are people out there who I've had to learn to live in my little 7 box now for the past 7 years. And I'm learning that. That's fine. Okay, I'll deal with that now. It's my karma, my mazel, whatever. But there were people at times when I first discovered Judaism, I was a yarmulke wearing fool. I told all my friends about it. I wanted to be Jewish. There was nothing more than I wanted to be Jewish. It was that's what I wanted, and yet there was something lacking. It's like this. It's like the way that the Jews were seeing the Jews I knew that saw conversion the way that I wanted was something completely different. I think what Rabbi Katz is getting in on is not halacha, but there is a spirituality to being a human being who worships the God of Israel. There is something more to 7 laws, and I think that that's what Katz and Chlorphene get into. And Chlorphene's blog is saying, don't convert, because what most people want isn't to marry a Jewess. They don't want to marry into Israel. They don't want to be Jewish. They want something more, but I don't think that that's necessarily what they want.
Wouldn't you acknowledge that spirituality, with that level that you're saying that's out there, is solely built off of midrashim? In other words, if you know that Torah itself, although it mentions of someone eating a nevela, it mentions the resident alien in many different aspects. We know that God never speaks to a resident alien. Moses never commands anything to them, right? There is no covenant made with the resident alien. It seems that resident alien is just synonymous with Gentile in Torah. Now, for someone to walk around and say that it's automatically the 4th holy house of Israel, when, only because
that just means they get married. That's a marriage law bit. The 4th house is about a marriage law. It's how they can marry.
Well, he's using the concept of the marriage to explain the 4th house.
Right.
Right, but the 4th house is not about marriage. The 4th house is his idea of the ger, and he's using the marriage law to explain how he understands the 4th house to be.
if you're going into the land of Israel and you're giving a law to these people, and in your last speech you say one law for you and those who sojourn with you, that's not going to mean Gentile, because you're not going to let some Molech worship, Peo worship, freaking, you're not going to have people placing incense and bowing down to dead dude on a stick. That would not be prohibited. So it doesn't mean Gentile. It's a specific, what kind of non-Jewish person could live and have rights in the land of Israel above that of the common man.
But the vast majority of commentators there teach that when it says one law, like for the ger and for the native born, every commentator says that means convert. Now, I know that ger means different things in Torah, right?
Sure.
But the only thing we can agree on is that an outsider could become, or could take upon himself all of Torah to the certain extent, that they're equivalent to a born Israelite to all regards. In other words, that someone could convert. It says, do not hate the Edomite, for he's your brother, right? I mean, people who are coming in, there's a notion of coming in, right? And there's a notion of someone who's allowed to eat a nevela. Okay. However, we don't know enough about this other Gentile. We know that God blesses those who keep his Torah, right? I mean, it says in Parshat Re'eh, who choose life, right? But it seems that you're praising Chlorophene for it.
I'm not praising him. I'm just saying I think I know exactly where he's coming from.
Right. Well, but then you know that he's coming from a completely midrashic avenue. In other words, this is not in the Bible. All we know that in Torah, God only gives one standard. Now, I personally believe that righteous Gentiles do exist, but I don't think the Bible speaks to that.
Right.
Right. I mean, it seems that God is telling people keep Torah.
Well, we find in the Tanakh. We find the Gibeonites.
Okay.
Okay, but the application of Torah as it comes out in the Tanakh in the prophets, we find the Gibeonites, we find the Eved of Solomon, and these people they go through sojourning with Israel, both of those groups, and we even see them coming back from the exile. Both of the Gibeonites and the Eved of Solomon, we see them coming back from the Babylonian exile. So they really stuck it out, and they were a distinct group. So we need to learn more about these groups and what they are.
So, in one area, in regards of any spirituality or anything spiritual, you guys rely on the rabbis 100%, right? And in this area, when virtually all the rabbis speak that the Gibeonites were converts who were forced to carry water, I mean, as you know in the Talmud, and with the exception of that portion, or not just the exception, but just in that portion of like Avodah Zarah 65, or is it 64? I don't remember right now. There's really nothing else written about the ger, right? Or I'm using the word ger loosely, but the notion of the ger toshav. There, it gives three things.
Ger toshav doesn't really exist in the Torah itself.
No, only Abraham called himself a ger and a toshav.
Right. Well, I mean, the notion of toshav is a ger that resides. I mean, it's a ger or gar, right? Which is a ger who dwells, right?
The sources don't really bother me as much because, I mean, before he wrote his book, I had my rabbi, who's a religious court judge, Rabbi Dov Neal. He said, it was in class, you're ger toshav. I'm assuming it was a parsha that has something to do with it, but he stopped and he says, look, I'm just going to say something right now. You're ger toshav. You've chosen us. You've chosen our God. You come to our teachers. You come to our sages. You read about our prophets. You can't go back now. You're one of us. And when the time comes, you'll have a tzitzi. You'll be with us on the way home. And great. I never really needed more than that. That's kind of how I see it. And
I've never heard a rabbi speak about that. I mean, if you could show me, even in Nativ, right? Like when they bring the rabbis to speak, it seems like when those rabbis think of ger, and I'm including Tovia Singer here, but they're just automatically thinking noide. Right?
Pretty much.
They're not taking it to the depths that Katz and Chlorophene take it. Right? And I've never seen another rabbi, or I mean, the other rabbis apart from chlorophene and cats, push that idea, which is why you telling me that you have a rabbi who in some way endorses what chlorophene does. I mean, it's a shock to me.
It was like 7
I'm not
years
aware
ago.
of any rabbi that endorses what Rabbi Corfein's doing.
Yeah, this was long before there was long before, I think, this was years ago. But Bob was in the same. I don't know if you were there that night, but Bob, that's where I met Bob. Was in Rabbi Dove's class, and he said it. And
yeah, but you know Scripture. And with what you know in Scripture,
right?
Just by Scripture alone, but does it sound like there's more than one standard?
On Scripture alone, no, but by qualifying that, I'm not sure if anybody's got that standard all the way right. I know there is a universal morality.
I mean, I believe that as well.
I know that huh?
I believe that as well.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know if rabbinical Judaism. I think the time of the rabbis is gone. I think like the time of the prophets went, the time of the rabbis is gone. Whatever's coming now is bigger than we're thinking. Nobody knows what's coming. I think what's coming is going to be better than what we have now. But as far, I think there's one standard, but I don't. Yeah, there are different standards. You don't hold a Kohen Gadol to the same standard as you would Johnny Yaakov.
Right, but it's still the Torah standard. I mean, it's mentioned within the 630.
There's a Torah, yeah. Right. There is a Torah standard, absolutely.
Right. So then you would have to acknowledge that everything that you've built your life on till now is built off of folklore and legend.
Oh, not everything, no.
It's built. I don't know if I would consider the Rambam, if I would consider the Mishnah Berurah, if I would consider the Kinuk to be.
The Rambam's 1,000 years ago. With the Mishnah Berurah is 100 years ago. I mean, these aren't even midrashim from.
But they discuss the Noahide within this. They discuss the gear within this.
No, I believe in the Noahide laws, but I believe that the Noahide laws were created by the Sanhedrin to be able to judge Gentiles living in the land of Israel.
Yeah.
Although.
Okay, that's possible.
Right.
Yeah,
you know.
That makes sense.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but like anything, halachic, give it enough time, and someone builds mysticism upon that. So then the Rambam teaches, right, that Adam was given 6 laws, and then Noach was given the 7th law, right? But this is automatically
one way to understand it,
right? But as students of Jewish law, we know if anything exists in Jewish law that has nothing to do with law, that falls under the realm of Agadah and Midrash. In other words, it's folklore and legend. I mean, it might be true, or it might not be true. I mean, for sure, it's not in the Torah. So, I mean, it's not absolutely true, right? I mean, it's for sure not true enough for a Jew.
I mean, a lot of it's in the Brisa.
That's fine. If something's in the Brisa
is Midrash. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Brisa is
no,
law.
In the Brisa,
it's Mishnah.
No. There are no.
Brisa is Mishnah that was. I mean,
Mishnaic literature. Yes, I agree. But
what? Yeah.
Mishnaic literature.
Yes.
Right, but it's still folklore within that Mishnaic literature. And for example, the reason the Rambam codified his set of laws is because he was trying to make a distinction. He was trying to separate folklore from law.
Yeah.
Because the Talmud, if you read the Talmud straight through, I mean, there's so many stories in there.
Yeah. I can't separate.
For you to take the law. You're like the meat from the bones, let's say. Right?
Yeah.
So this is why we have the Shulchan Aruch. This is why I have the Mishnah Berurah. This is why, because he was in some way trying to muzzle the sages in terms of their tales and legends. Right? Tales and legends, I'm not saying are bad. I'm just saying they're not enough to build a doctrine upon, or for sure not enough to build a religion off or a movement off. That's all I'm saying. I believe in the 7 laws of Noah.
Sure.
Okay. However, I believe that if someone wants to join something, anything, they should try to reach first, like the most secure degree they can acquire. Right. If my kid wanted to go to college, I mean, and he asked me, like, should I get an online degree or should I get an actual degree from an accredited university? Right? I mean, I tell him, try to get the accredited degree.
Right.
And that is what Judaism is. In other words, it's the closest, it's the most secure thing that we can have in a religious world. But that Jews who keep Torah have a share in the world to come. Now, personally, sure.
I don't see a limit to what a Noahide is capable of doing. I mean, we might have boundaries, but I don't see a limit to how far a Noahide can go.
Well, according to Torah or according to Midrashim?
For a Noahide, I don't see how it would be advantageous to convert to become a Jew over going as far as I can as a Noahide, because as far as I can tell, there's no limit as to how far I can go as a Noahide.
Yeah, but the whole notion of a Noahide is invented off the back of Midrashim. In other words, it came from Midrashim. So, I mean, you're starting off with a car that has a flat tire already. Now, if you understand what I'm saying? I'm just saying, what's more secure?
But most of modern Judaism was created by the Great Assembly.
Right, I agree.
It was invented anyway.
Yeah, but it's to amplify something that already exists, which is the Torah. I mean, the job of rabbinic Judaism is to amplify the Torah, which is the same job the prophets had, only to bring Israel back to Torah, right? But what are you guys bringing a ger back to? I mean, like a medrash? I mean,
it's when it's like Bruce Lee. He says, when you want to aim when you punch, aim 3 inches behind your target, because you want it to be spot on. Okay. For those of us who don't fight for a living, when you say be Jewish, I want to add this. Damn it. Just go for it. Do it. That plunge, is what ger is about for some people, who are on the fringe. You've got the Holy of Holies, you've got the Kohen who guards it, you have the Kohen Gadol who guards it, the Kohen guard him, the Levites guard the Kohen, Israel guards the Levites, and then you've got everybody else who comes and attaches on and comes to God.
All that is found in Torah, like minus those who attach themselves on. I'm just saying, I'm a Torah guy. Right?
If you want to look at, if you want to go straight by Scripture, which I think one thing that Christians have one up on is because they're so dependent on the text. And I think maybe because I cling to that, because it's like, this is an oracle. This is like my sacred thing. This is what I want to hold to me. I'll join in on the rabbinic conversation that I believe is ongoing now. I would love that, but I'm real big on the written. There is no Noahide, like you said, and even Ben Noah. What you got? Those are the actual 3 sons of Noah. There's nobody else in Torah that would describe now somebody who leaves idolatry and attaches to Israel and looks to Jerusalem and looks to the rabbis, looks to the sages of old. No matter what they're teaching, they look to Torah. They look to the Jewish people for guidance in the world. They look to the God of Israel. There's only one thing in Torah that really kind of fits our bill. I mean, we've got, all your descendants will keep certain amount of laws. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And then that's it. And we don't really get what it means. There's no really other way to describe people like me who left Episcopalian, high Episcopalian, where we bowed to statues and all that good stuff.
Frozen chicken.
I say that in jest. Attached to Israel, there is a ger, though. There is a teaching, even in the prophets later, that talk about somebody who comes from afar and attaches, resides. I mean, I might not live in the land. I might be in the same diaspora everyone else is, but I go to Torah, I go to rabbis via email, or I'll call Rabbi Goldman if I have to up the road, or whatever. I can.
We spoke about that verse in Isaiah 56. I mean, I interpret that completely different. But
Isaiah 14.
Oh, all right. I was thinking of Isaiah 56.
Whatever. But, even if I'm a no creed, that's great.
Yeah, but even according to Rabbinic Judaism, a ger toshav is supposed to vow not to worship idols while he's living in the land of Israel. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to believe it. I mean, he just doesn't have to act it out. But this whole thing, but that someone walks around knowing Torah is true, and in some way chooses not to go all the way, not to say, you know what, if Torah is true here, I'm just going to go ahead and circumcise myself here and just be part of the people of God. I mean, forget about the term Israel.
But what about people like me who have a wife who is the greatest woman ever, and she's Shituf? You know, I married a Christian woman. I certainly wasn't going to marry a humanist or a good woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was years ago, before I started taking classes. You know, this is the mother of my children. I'm not going to leave her. If I go Jewish, I'm screwed.
You're not screwed technically.
So
why?
You know, so where do I go here? There's got to be, God has to provide some wiggle room. I can't just be Jewish.
Well, I mean, that wiggle room does exist. Only because rabbis nowadays won't perform a conversion for someone married to a Christian. I would. Why? Because I don't want people to get divorced. So you know how many people get divorced just to convert, when technically, now, I explain Christianity completely different, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that we could get her into to admit some sort of monotheistic stance that she could convert under. In other words, I mean, perhaps you could get her not to believe in God as a man or something. I think that, just like you explained,
we don't have idols in the house, and she's real good to not put, you know.
Well, I don't consider messianics idolaters, but that's another issue. I mean, I'm not messianic. I don't know if you see my video on this, but
right.
I think, yes. I mean, you are in a difficult situation, but because of you're the exception to the rule, but because of the exception, you shouldn't build a whole movement off this exception. I mean, the idea should still be to convert. In other words, there's many people who've tossed out, like, following traditional Torah and have chosen to live a ger lifestyle, even when he has the ability to convert. In other words, I mean, Jews are going to wish, God forbid, if there's another Holocaust or, I mean, something horrible like that, but that there were more Jews, there were more converts, right? I mean, this whole thing, you can't play into the hand. Uh-huh.
My kitchen would have to be kosher, correct?
Your kitchen would have to be kosher.
No, see, I'm telling you, there's got to, I know,
I mean,
you can convince
even
her.
from that perspective, it would benefit you to be a bad Jew compared to a good Gentile, right? I mean, as you know, Gentiles put to death for breaking any of the 7 laws, right? You know,
can I quote you on that, Asher?
Absolutely. This is the Rambam. The halacha is that a non-Jew is put to death for breaking any of the 7 laws with one witness, with no pre-warning. While a Jew, I mean, could break over 100 laws and not be put to death. Now, obviously, no one's putting anyone to death nowadays. We don't have a Sanhedrin. But from a legal standpoint, it would definitely be better to be a bad Jew compared to a good Gentile. And I'm pretty sure no rabbi would disagree with me on that. But for some reason, they keep on encouraging this lifestyle when, I mean, God forbid, I mean, when the time comes, there's another Sanhedrin. They're going to expect with Noahites to put their own family members to death. I mean, which is, I mean, again, I don't think it'll come to that, because I don't believe that they'll consider Christianity or the Messianic Judaism that exists today idolatry, or idolatry to the point that it would require the death penalty.
At best, it's Shituf.
Right. Well, I mean, the whole notion is an Ashkenazi idea, first of all. I mean, it was mentioned by Tosfos.
It might, you know, worshiping Shituf would be a death penalty under Noahide law.
It would?
Yes. The belief in Shituf would be allowed, but the worship of Shituf would be considered idolatry.
Okay.
So
right.
it's a complicated thing.
You know what? I would agree with Idol Smasher here. Okay, so the whole notion of Shituf, first of all, like, Sephardim never adopted this whole notion of Shituf because it only came up in the Ashkenazi world. So Tosfos and the Ramah, right? So the Ramah is famous for saying that Christians are not idolaters, and when they're saying they're not idolaters, I mean, he's speaking from a rabbinic perspective. That means in the Ashkenazi world. Now, some say that the reason he did it is because he wanted to benefit off the wine of Gentiles. It doesn't really matter why he said it, you know, but what the notion is that partnerships with the God of Israel are not, or is not, idolatry for Gentiles, according to Tosfos, which is, like with the grandsons of Rashi, or the students of Rashi. Now, according to the Rambam, it is. Now the Rambam doesn't even mention this notion of Shituf.
Yeah.
I mean, the Rambam considers you a heretic if you believe that, God has even a shape, right? I mean, apart from saying that he become a man, it's not a. So yeah, from an Ashkenazi perspective, depending, who'd be running the Sanhedrin at that time, Shituf would be allowed for Gentiles, right? Now,
we could be put to death for it.
No, could not be.
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
No, could not be put to death, according to the Ramah and according to Tosfos, right? Gentiles are not put to death, because Shituf is allowed for them.
I used to call the Christian religion improved idolatry.
Right, correct. Now, this is not in the Talmud, by the way. Tosfos is not
right.
we're in Tanayim. So this is all up in the air. Don't forget, there wasn't real Christianity in Talmudic times. Okay, so with the Talmud, and this is my whole basis for saying Christianity is not idolatry, or Christianity is idolatry. I'm sorry, but Messianic Judaism is not idolatry, because Messianic Judaism really didn't exist in the time of Chazal, in the Talmud. Now we have a few references of someone who may have been JC, like in the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud, but this guy existed around 250 years before. So I'm saying that because there's no Sanhedrin, it's hard for us to say if these guys would technically be idolaters.
Right.
Well, on the other hand, I say that Islam and Muslims are idolaters because they actually worship a different God, right? Every Messianic Jew walks around thinking that he's an Orthodox Jew, who believes in a Jewish carpenter. Okay, Muslims believe that Jews have corrupted the Torah, and that what the Quran gives a true Torah. So this is already a different religion. Okay, their God expects something different. At least Messianic Jews, hey, as much as Messianic Jews, as much as they're Christians, they claim to be Jews, and they claim to hold some type of oral law, right? Besides Michael Rood, who surprisingly calls himself a Karaite Messianic Jew. Okay, so I would classify them as some Kabbalistic group. Okay, just like, or some Hasidic group, just like Chabad. Many of them walk around thinking the Rebbe's the Messiah, and some even teach that the Rebbe's God. Right?
Yeah.
It's more like in Kafar Chabad. And these guys are considered Jews. Why can you consider someone who believes that JC is the Messiah, but keeps all of Jewish law, oral and written, but just believes, that he's the Messiah? I don't see, there's a double standard there. Okay.
I agree. I think that we need to separate an actual display that we see, bless them, people who bow down before engraven images, openly, publicly. We know what that is, because that's made pretty clear in Torah what that
Catholicism is idolatry, no doubt.
Yeah, but we have like LDS, Mormons, and JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses, and there are people out there who, when they pray to the Heavenly Father, and they don't believe in praying. It's like, why would I asked my sister when I first got to learn about my dad's LDS and the whole family's LDS, and I said, so you don't pray to Jesus at all ever? And she's like, why would we pray to Jesus? He's our brother. And I was like, okay.
We believe in three different gods, right? The Father, Son, Holy Spirit. For them, is three different. Not that I don't even know if that makes. That would be problematic.
That's Buddhism. That's the Catholicism trying to be universal with the Buddhist mind, body, and spirit bit. It came 500 years before.
Yeah, I don't. This is one of the more controversial things I teach, but I don't think the Trinity itself. I consider the Trinity as similar to the Sefirot, and I don't believe in the Sefirot. If I don't believe in Kabbalistic ideas of God having a penis and and all these things, but there was a famous rabbi, I can't remember his name, who said that the Jews of that Kabbalists split God up into 10 and Christians split him up into 3. Right? So I also don't consider Kabbalists idolaters. I just consider them foolish. This is why a Messianic Jew who keeps Torah or tries to keep Torah or unwritten fully, but happens to believe in the Trinity, I would still consider him Jewish, but just foolish. Right? You know,
well, except that a Kabbalist would say that a particular Sephiros, they would not say that this is their God. They would, the Christian would take JC and say this is their God, and so it's very different in that sense.
I would disagree there. I mean, it clearly says, even in the songs. I mean, in the songs that we sing on Shabbos for third meal, it says that we beseech the Zeiran Pin, the small face, you know, in the evening. In other words, like they pray to certain parts of the Partsufim, you know, within the Sefirot at different times. I mean, it's just
well, they're using
really just
they're using names. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. You know, so they're splitting God's up. I mean, God up in segments.
But they don't see it as separate. It
depends who you ask.
They're connecting into this. They're using the name to connect into God. They're not saying that God is separate.
Well, they teach that God is there's God the Son and God the Father, and now there's God the Mother, right? And then there's actually,
you're talking about the Christians.
We forget about Mary, don't we? We always leave
okay.
I
guess I'm saying that the Jews do not say. It would be like different gateways.
No, there's
that they can enter with.
All right. So there's God the Mother, and there's God the Son, and there's God the Father in the Partsufim, right? And I have a whole video called "Exposing the Sefirot" that I give sources for all this. Now, there's just so much Kabbalistic literature, not even translated into English, but that teaches a lot of these ideas. And I think that they're both problematic. Okay, I'm not going to consider them heretical, and I'm not going to consider them idolaters. But I'm at the same time not going to consider someone who believes that God is 3 in 1, but ultimately 1, but is 3. I mean, that's why it's called the mystery of the Trinity, because no one can really explain it. I'm not going to consider him an idolater either, because he's still talking about the God of Israel. Okay, I mean, it's a twisted understanding of the God of Israel, but I mean, don't forget, idolaters have to be put to death. I mean, you're telling me, you know,
very charitable people.
Yeah,
these Catholics, very charitable, very charitable.
No, I mean Messianics. No, I mean Catholics make no attempt to keep Torah. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, someone who tries to keep Torah like a Jew, you know, who identifies himself as part of Israel, but happens to believe that God has a body. You know, I don't think, honestly, anyone who reads Tanakh straight through is going to come to a realization that God has a body. Okay. Now, I understand with the way the Rambam explains it, and I agree with that. You know, that it's like it's symbolism, it's hyperbole. God doesn't really have a body, but it says God brought you out of Egypt with a mighty hand. It says that Hashem ish milchama, that he's like a man of war. Okay, I'm just saying, it seems that how could a good God punish, I mean, someone who's not smart enough to understand, you know what, this perhaps may not be taken literally, because philosophically down the road, it's going to hurt us. Okay, you know, it just doesn't make sense that a good God would in some way punish people like that. When, I mean, even in the Talmud, we see rabbis, I mean, talking about God wearing tefillin, you know, I mean, it seems like they were pretty corporeal back then as well, right? You know, I mean, Rabbi Akiva looking up into heaven and seeing that there are 2 thrones in heaven, one for the Messiah and one for God. Of course, he's chastised by the other rabbis, but I don't, you know, idolater is a heavy word. Right, and to just toss it around lightly, you know, every time I see a messianic, I mean, I just see, I mean, someone that just needs a little push, right? I mean, not someone that I'm supposed to try to kill. You know,
even on the subject of just general Christianity, we look at what in the Torah, just the Torah itself, we get examples of idols, whether it's a living man like Pharaoh or like Peor or Merculus or whatever. We get these, or Molech, excuse me. I don't know if Merculus is in, I think Merculus is in Torah. Anyway, we get examples of these idols, these foreign, deserve to be wiped out. I'm not going to disagree with God on that. But then where do we have in Torah anything like Christianity? Where, yeah, they carry some of this pagan stuff, but they acknowledge, you know, a creator. They acknowledge him as creator. They make monuments of the Ten Commandments.
right.
You know, where do we get that in history? Where do we get that in Torah? We don't get that. Really. And I'm not saying that the Christianity is like Buddhism hasn't carried over its paganism into its religion. But they seem to have an eye on the ball somewhere that we never get. We don't hear of that kind of idolatry happening in Torah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you're describing an American form of Christianity, right? I mean, almost anything born out of this country, I mean, was beautiful. You know, Mormonism is one of those religions that are fully American. Also, like the conservative movement, right? Conservative Jews.
Seventh-day Adventists.
But Christians in Europe, I mean, I'm talking about like before Moody, you know, like before, you know, like the revivals, you know, like in the U.S. 150 years ago. I mean, Christians would behave like you know, like Christians behave in the Middle East today. I mean, just like the Muslims do. I mean, not the violent Muslims, but they're as indifferent with a non-Christian as a Hindu is as indifferent to a non-Hindu, right? But I think that's the U.S.'s contribution to religion. That just like Muslims in the U.S. are a little more tolerant and a lot more loving than Muslims around the world, Christians in America are a lot more tolerant and loving. I mean, we're the biggest charitable, Christians are the biggest charitable bloc in the U.S. But I think ultimately, with Christianity, apart from Torah, right? I mean, apart from Messianic Judaism, I think their philosophy that will end up catching up with them, right? I mean, they could only be like friendly, I mean, to the Jews for so long, you know, before like they just turn back and, you know, I mean, history has repeated itself in this area, right? Like when Martin Luther first loving the Jews and then turning on the Jews. But I think the segment that's not evident in the Talmud are Messianic Jews. I mean, people who just, you know, now I'm speaking about the idyllic Messianic Jew, because we know no Messianic Jew really tries to keep anything. I mean, whatever. I mean, he'll walk into McDonald's and he'll be like, no cheese on that, right? Because I'm an Orthodox Jew. But I'm saying in Israel, you know, places like Ranana, right? I mean, I think there was like a little Nazarene group there, like who views Yeshua like their Rebbe, right? I mean, these are guys with black hats. They keep Shabbos, they keep everything, but they happen to believe in Yeshua. All right, I don't, you know, even if they believe that the God of Israel in some way became a man for 33 years, or encompassed the body of a man for 33 years, and then, you know, went back or whatever, I don't think. I consider that foolish. I don't consider that idolatry. You know, I just don't, you know. And by the simple fact that Jews are willing to accept, you know, atheist Jews as brothers, right? You know, but like they have more in common with an atheist than they do with a Messianic Jew. I mean, view it like a gross double standard. I remember like when I was in Israel, if you made Aliyah from the former Soviet Union, you'd get double the money than if you made Aliyah from the U.S. Well, the reason why is because if you made Aliyah from the U.S., it meant that you were religious, and if you made Aliyah from the former Soviet Union, from Russia, it almost by definition means that you're an atheist, right? I mean, most Russians in Israel, I mean, are also not even like, most of them aren't even Jewish, but the ones who are Jewish are not religious at all, right? You know, it's because it's not just that they're anti-Christian, they're anti-religious, right? You know, but there is a specific hatred that Judaism has nowadays for Christianity that is really not fair. I mean, it's really not. I mean, for sure. I mean, since at least Woodrow Wilson is not deserved. Okay, you know, I mean, Woodrow Wilson being a big supporter of Jews having their own state and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is why I don't consider the Messianic Jews heretics, and I think that they should just be brought close and be given that little push. I guarantee you, any Messianic Jew that you bring close is going to end up dropping JC. I mean, that's just what happens. And when you bring Messianic Jews close, well, they realize that first of all, that Messianic rabbis don't know anything, right? Because the average Messianic Jew, once you keep him in his little bubble, he walks around thinking that his rabbi is the most knowledgeable individual on earth, right? When the guy can't even read Hebrew, okay? Whenever you bring a Messianic Jew close, he's going to drop JC. And he's not going to influence any religious Jew to convert to Messianic Judaism. It just doesn't happen. I mean, I've never met a like an Orthodox Jew, like become a Messianic. Although, like, I am of the opinion that Rabbi Kaduri actually was a Messianic, just because I don't hold Kabbalist, I mean, in such high regard. You know, I just... Huh?
J-Dub's just joined, and before he runs out on us, because he'll sometimes get raptured here and there. Yochanan, it's good to see you. I'm wearing my circus fez in your honor and Path's honor as well. Hopefully, Path of Abraham will get in here. Yes, Kak. He's like, I want to see the fez again. And when I saw John, I had to show where my fez. I put the fez on because someone made a comment about the special hats. Because I got this actually at the conference down in Texas, and handmade, and I always wear it. And I said, "You want to see a special hat? Oh yeah, movement. Here's a special hat. Noah Hyde and the Shrine Circus fez on YouTube and a Noah Hyde hangout. Top that. Ain't nobody else gonna do
like
it."
a Shriner. Yeah.
My granddad was a Shriner, and more I noticed about Freemasons, those people can build.
You know, I've researched a lot Freemasonry, and I actually had a close friend who was a rabbi who was a Mason, and it's all this hatred against the Masons. It's all fluff. It's all nonsense, man.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are not. As a matter of fact, they don't accept you as a Mason unless you acknowledge the belief of one God. Okay, I mean, these guys aren't worshiping the devil there. And there's a whole story of Hiram Abiff that most people don't even know about. It's also, a medrash. But yeah, I mean, what Freemasonry is not idolatrous, at least how it's practiced today. But
John just left. I gave him controls of the room, and he took off. Oh, there he is again. I want to give you controls anyway. You can leave, John, if you want. I want to share.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get a good internet connection. I'm just trying. Thank you for saying hello. Hello, James. How are you? And Rabbi, hello. Shalom. Shalom alaikum.
Hi. Alaikum shalom. So, in terms of what we know that Torah is true. That's the foundation of our belief system. That, I mean, to doubt that is to doubt, I mean, at least me, for a religious person, my whole existence. Okay, everything we believe on terms of something being metaphysical has to stem from the 5 books of Moses. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 17 commands us to heed the words of the judges. This, what the Rambam writes in Sefer Mitzvot, is the command we have to listen to the rabbis. I mean, he writes in the first parak of Hilchos Mamrim, he says, "Based in Agadol Sheba Yerushalayim, Chaim Eker Torah Shebal Peh," that the Sanhedrin in Israel, they are the foundation of the oral law. Now, we know that the members of this court were selected for their knowledge of Torah, and what the law teaches us was that everything they instituted was voted into existence because they were a court. I mean, just like the men of the Great Assembly was also the Sanhedrin of that time. Now, in Jewish law, we learn that rabbis only have the authority to teach on legal issues, and anything metaphysical that a rabbi teaches on falls under the realm of Agadata, of folklore and legend, midrashim, and are not to be taken literally.
Right.
Now, again, we know that anything metaphysical that appears in the Torah aligns itself with the idea that God has one standard, and he wants everyone to come to that standard. You see, God's in the time of Moses, God's in the times of Abraham, also had a method, a preferred method to be worshipped in, right? But you mentioned Baal Peor, right? And he was worshipped by defecation and eating beets and all that stuff, right? Now, the God of Israel also required worship. However, with the God of Israel was a God that you worshipped through obedience. And it was a God that, apart from also being a God who claimed to be all-powerful and all-knowing, apart from every other God, he claimed to be good. And this is what made him unique. The other fake gods in the Bible, I mean, if you looked at the way they would behave, I mean, they behaved worse than people. They would rape, they would steal, right? But the God of Israel was the only God you could actually emulate. And it seems that the way that you worship this God is just by keeping his instructions. That's the only way to worship and commune with the God of Israel. Now, his instructions travel in a linear fashion, right? Noah had a few instructions, Abraham had a few instructions, but he kept on building on that. He kept on building on that. And now, with the tip of the that linear history was Mount Sinai, right? That was his depiction of the perfect man, of the perfect form of individual training. Now, it seems that with this whole notion of choose and pick Judaism, which is really what the Noahide Ger movement is, kind of goes against, is almost antithetical to this good God in Israel that wants you to keep his instructions fully. Right? This notion that you can pick and choose what you want and still be considered.
But God, didn't God pick and choose with Israel? He didn't force the Torah on anybody until they got to Israel. They accepted it, but I mean, God. If God picks and chooses, that means that.
I mean, God doesn't pick and choose. I mean, the vast majority of Jews who left Egypt, or the vast majority of individuals who left Egypt, weren't Hebrews. At least, I mean, this is how Rashi teaches it, right? That a mixed multitude left along with them. Kabbalistic literature wants to throw all the sins of the Jews on this mixed multitude on the Erev Rav and blame them for everything. That's not accurate. Okay, I mean,
I'm not myself.
It's always been a call.
Jews are capable of sin, and non-Jews do nothing but sin.
Right. Now, it's always been a call.
How many mitzvahs did God give to Israel?
Well, but the Talmud says 613.
Okay. From the 613, or however you want to count it, does any one Jew do all of it?
No. I mean, it's impossible. I mean, some are for men, there's women. I mean, some are
right. So there's different categories. We can speak of maybe the three houses. We'll skip about the fourth house right now. But
I agree. But all those categories appear in Torah, right? I mean, all those categories appear in Torah. We're talking about what's in Scripture versus what's not in Scripture.
The Torah is you have the oral Torah and the written Torah. I mean, if you're only going to go with the written Torah, that's Karaite. We have the written Torah that helps us to understand things, but the oral Torah is where it's all explained. And so we know that there are categories. We know that there are slaves that have certain status. Women have certain status. Different people have different statuses depending upon who they are.
I agree.
And so, so how do we say that there is, when you're saying a person is supposed to convert, how do we know what applies to the convert? It's
because the oral Torah tells us.
Oh, okay. So now we're relying upon the oral Torah.
Correct. Right.
And
oral
the
Torah
same
doesn't
oral
contain-
Torah that also tells us about the Ger Toshav status.
No. I mean, there's one section of the Talmud that talks about a Ger Toshav, and the rabbis cannot agree on exactly what they actually keep, right? I mean, there's one opinion that they keep everything. Now, there's one opinion that they only keep 7 laws, and there's one opinion that they keep everything minus whether they're allowed to eat a nevela, right? So, I mean, the rabbis weren't sure exactly what they had, but for sure, I mean, they never considered it a holy status or the 4th holy house of Israel. I mean, this is, extra. Now, I believe in the Noahide laws, but the oral law doesn't contain mystical portions to it, right? I mean, midrashim are not part of the oral law. Oral law contains law. I mean, it's instruction. How do you do something? What's incumbent to a Gentile? What's incumbent is that they have to keep 7 laws. That's how we make sure that Gentiles living in the land of Israel do not behave like animals. However, a Ger Toshav that wasn't made outside of the land of Israel. That's why, because our jurisdiction doesn't extend that far.
What's the word's macablin, I think. We're not macablin.
Right.
What I heard. Yeah, there's the legal status of Ger Toshav isn't going to apply anyway, but the legal status of a lot of stuff in Torah won't apply.
Let's stick with Scripture. With what we know of Scripture.
Well, you want to stick with Scripture, or you want to stick with the Torah?
No.
I mean, the Torah is both written and
oral. Yeah, but the oral law is still law.
What if there was a universal? What if there's a universal message in Torah that reaches any human? That doesn't apply to the stock of Jacob, but that applies to the general humanity. I mean, what does Torah teaches that God didn't give Shabbat? God did not share Shabbat with anybody. I think Baba Metzia 16 says that it was given to the Gentiles or the non-Jews in secret, but it was revealed to Israel alone. So,
I think the Torah is for everybody, just like you said.
Yeah,
absolutely, the Torah is for everybody.
Right. Yeah, but the Torah of Moses is for everyone. The 613 commandments are for everyone.
Well, no. There's 613. We already established the 613 commandments. No individual person does the 613. I am connected to the 613, even though I have accepted the Torah as it applies to myself as a Noahide. I accept the 7 laws of Noah because it was given in the Torah on Sinai. It was taught through Moses. I accept this. I am now a part of the system that includes the entire Torah. Therefore, I am attached to the entire Torah.
I mean, is that part of the oral law? I mean, is that in the Talmud?
That's Rambam.
No, I mean, the Rambam says that if someone keeps with the seven laws because it was given through Moses, I mean, he's considered one of the Chassidim Olam. But that doesn't mean that.
And he has a share. And he has a share in the world to come.
For sure, in that section, and then he says, like in a Serbia,
they don't have a share. That means I'm in the system.
No, that's just an opinion, because he also.
What do you mean opinion?
But in a Serbia, with chapter 14, he contradicts himself and he says that they don't have a share because he's quoting the Talmud directly. There's portions of the Talmud that say that Gentiles, even righteous Gentiles, don't have a share, right? But there and in Hilchot Teshuvah, I mean, he says he does have a share, or they do have a share. It's an ambiguous thing. These portions, anything that has to do with people having a share in the world to come, is midrash, okay? Because, as you know, the Torah doesn't talk about a world to come. The Torah just has laws and tells you to keep those laws. As a matter of fact, we see them doing good, and they weren't rewarded or promised a world to come or cursed or threatened with hell.
I always thought the world to come meant you get to live. The world to come, I always thought that meant you get to live.
Oh, well,
you're not doing idolatry?
It's understood today means like being saved or going to heaven.
Right.
Well, I don't know about the world to come going to heaven. I don't know about that, but I know that it means that you're in the system.
That's a new definition. I never heard of in the system. I mean, you keep Torah. Look,
I'm in the system, and what does I am in the Torah now. I'm signed up. I'm part of it. And what applies to me? I got these 7 laws. They apply to me. Okay, good. I'm going to go with gusto into those 7 laws as far as I possibly can, which is infinity.
That's under the Torah.
I have nothing. I can go absolutely forever because the Torah is infinite. And if I have 7 laws of the Torah, that's 7 laws of infinity. I'm there. What more can I possibly imagine?
The Rambam was just quoting a medrash. In other words, it's not in Torah. The written Torah is our basis for anything metaphysical, because no one died and went to heaven and saw what was actually up there.
I don't know anything about dying and go to heaven.
Right. So if it doesn't appear in the 5 books of Moses, it's opinion. If it's metaphysical and it doesn't appear in the 5 books of Moses, it's only opinion. If it's law brought down by the Sanhedrin and it doesn't appear in the 5 books of Moses, it's law because God commands us to heed the rulings of the court. But the court doesn't rule on metaphysical issues. But there's many rabbis in the Talmud who had personal metaphysical opinions. Now,
does the law doesn't wait? That's for Jews and Gentile and non-Jews alike, right? As far as the halakhic, there's no halakha on the world to come, is there? The halakha only applies in the living, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Well, I mean, it depends who you ask. I mean, the Rambam also, never mentions the world to come.
Right.
But, he does he does bring down with the halachas of Mashiach, and no one would, say Mashiach is in Torah. And, but by the simple fact that everyone has different opinions of who Mashiach is or who he will be or whatever, it shows that there is no clear halacha on Mashiach. But Hilchot Melachim of the Rambam is considered almost like Hilchos Mashiach, just because he's the only one who ever tried to codify the notion of Messiah or who we're actually waiting for. But right, there aren't any halachas built on metaphysical issues that don't appear in the Torah, right? Because if the Sanhedrin could rule on anything metaphysical, why didn't they just rule the Messiah to be here tomorrow? Or rule that our exile should end? Of course they could.
Everything be perfect now. Go. Right?
So, in terms of what we know in the metaphysical, God only gave one standard in Torah, and Torah is that standard. The 630 commandments is that standard. Now,
well, actually, it's 620.
It could be, 650 if you count them.
No, it's 620.
Hey, the Hasidus,
the crown of Torah.
The Hasidus broke Noahide law down to 624 on a website years ago. I haven't found it in a while, but they had.
There's actually more than 613 commandments if you count them one by one. But there's a tradition in the Talmud that there's 613, right? Because the gematria of Torah is 611, and the 2 commandments that God spoke verbatim on the mountain. So they said 613, but there's actually more if you count them.
Okay, here's a good question for you, Rabbi, if I may make so bold.
Sure.
Shabbat and Noah. Shabbat was given. Sinai, the progenitor of humanity, was not given Shabbat. As far as 613 goes, how would the Shabbat apply to the non-Jew far from Israel?
All right.
Would it apply?
I have a video on this called Gentiles Could Keep Shabbat Fully. And I just saw that Cat came out with one saying that they can't. All right. So with this notion that they can't is built off from the Talmud. There's a statement that says, Akum sheshavet chayv mita, that a Gentile who keeps the Sabbath is liable to the death penalty. Right. But then it says immediately it says afterwards, it says Rava says that this is not a regular Shabbat. And it goes down in discussion and saying that Jews keep Shabbat from night to day. But Gentiles keep Shabbat from day to night. So, but the only distinction is that
it's in So Mazal. It's incredibly confusing.
I never even read So Mazal. This is a Parshas Drachim. Parshas Drachim. There was a Kabbalistic book. This is just me doing mental pill pull. I made a video on it. Just to bring down the sources, But ideally, any Gentile who would want to keep Shabbat should just convert to Judaism. Now, this whole notion of having Gentiles floating around the Jewish world waiting for a 5-year conversion process, not knowing what to call themselves, didn't exist in Mishnaic nor biblical times. Why? Because according to halakha, conversion takes 1 day. Right? I mean, it takes as much. Right. I mean, it says, and you can look it up. Look in the Rambam. Look at Surah chapter 14. It says if somebody comes to convert, that we tell them some of the light commandments, and with some of the heavier ones, and then it says if he accepts, we accept him immediately, and then we tell him a second time while he's in the water. So in other words, if that's a 5-year conversion process or even a 1-year conversion process, you're only teaching Torah to this individual 2 times? No, because conversion took 1 day. I mean, why wouldn't it take,
Yeah, well, back then you had the death penalty. So if the person wasn't serious, he was in trouble. Today you don't have a death penalty. Today's people.
But this is the Rambam.
Yeah, you need 5 years for serious.
The Rambam died in 1205 of the Common Era. So the Rambam was laying down the law. But don't forget, even the Talmud, with this portion in Yevamot 47, was written when there was no death penalty in Israel, because under the Romans, with the death penalty was lifted, which is why the Romans had to kill JC. So it just sounds that, I mean, Gentiles are getting a bad rap nowadays, and I think that the Noahide movement is a reactionary movement. There wouldn't be a Noahide movement if conversions took 1 day, but now becoming Jewish has become politicized. Right? I mean, the reason they want to make it impossible to become Jewish is because they don't want people to become economic burdens to the state of Israel.
Yeah,
that was to Judaism. You could get citizenship. I mean, I made Aliyah. I converted 18 years ago. And you know what?
Well, they got welfare. They got welfare for converts in Israel.
For sure. I mean, a convert is not considered a convert in Israel. I mean, in Israel, a convert makes Aliyah just like everyone else makes Aliyah. Although they've been trying to pass a certain law that converts would not be allowed to make Aliyah, right? But I mean, they've been trying to pass this law for 3 years, but they haven't done it.
Well, now you got me interested.
Well, I mean, you could convert, move to Israel. I mean, you can live.
Because I'm in my 50s now, and maybe early retirement would be nice.
Well, if these Jews were serious about this Ger movement, I mean, they should. I mean, give you guys with the same rights. I mean, they give a born Jew coming back, and technically, right, according to the halakha, a Jew has to support you. So this is why.
Yeah. I'm thinking more about socialist, welfare system.
Oh well, they don't pay you that much. I mean, they give you housing.
Oh, forget it then. I'm going to say no.
I mean, when I made Aliyah through Nefesh B'Nefesh, and they were paying a lot more back then. So Nefesh B'Nefesh is a private organization. I think they gave me $5,000 to make Aliyah. And now this is apart from the Sochnut, from the Jewish Agency, which gives you around $170 a month for 6 months. And then, but if you make Aliyah young enough, they'll even pay for your college. Yeah, it's most people who make Aliyah actually come back. Most people don't know that, and they see everyone's making Aliyah because all you see is like the videos with the guys hopping out the plane with the shofars. They don't know that the majority of those people actually come back to America.
I hear there's a lot of people who turn atheist when they make Aliyah. When they go home for a while, they'll come back with an atheist streak in them.
Well, it's because like most Jews in Israel behave like animals. I mean, like specifically the religious do. They're just. I mean, it's not like you're going to your local Chabad or Young Israel here. You're talking about people who've never even dealt with a Gentile, right? And they'll no one makes lines in Israel. I remember like waiting in the bus and people just cut right in line. They're just like, there was this Noahide couple. There's actually a Noahide couple at the Kotel, but not in the actual front of the Kotel, but in the Western Wall Plaza there, and they were holding hands, right? An old couple and a little Hasidic guy, just wanted to walk through, so he kind of took their hands, broke them apart, and walked right through them. This is stuff
Seriously?
that you put up with in Israel. It's not the bombs, it's not the Arabs. It's the crappy Jews you have to deal with, and this is something that most people don't talk about because they think, oh, you're speaking Lashon Hara, like on the land of Israel. But I mean, it's horrible there, and this is why like Jews have to have something to offer the non-Jewish world, because when you don't interact with non-Jews, you begin not to consider them human. I mean, I remember when I was converting over 18 years ago, I mean, the rabbi I was learning with was an Israeli guy. And then, I mean, he asked me how many members in my family like are married to like sisters and mothers. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because they're taught to think that Gentiles are like eating their children on a stick. They're,
well, it's not like we haven't earned the reputation in Europe anyway,
Yeah, they weren't Christians. They weren't Americans, for sure not. And it's honestly,
we've gotten better
the truth. I mean, secular Jews behaved worse than the Nazis did in Europe. I mean, anyone who knows anything about the Russian Revolution and the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks, I'm just read Alexander Solzhenitsyn and the gulags, and I mean,
yeah.
These were run by Jews, secular Jews. It was two Jews who founded with the Gulag, right? I mean, like Maxim Berman and Naftali Frankel. Like it was a Jew, like who was responsible for killing over 7 million in the Ukrainian genocide. Like in the famine. I mean, most people don't know this. So I don't romanticize Jews. I mean, I romanticize Torah.
Hey, when Jews go, you guys go. I mean, when a Jew wants to,
right,
you guys do it better than anybody, which is kind of.
I mean, 80% of Jews voted for Obama, right? I mean, in the U.S., just in the U.S. alone, I mean, who are the founders of feminism? Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem. I mean, these people. So I don't romanticize Jews. I have an uncle who's a Messianic rabbi. And then he, every time he meets someone who's Jewish, ethnically Jewish, he'll go up and he'll give him a hug. I'm like, I mean, you don't know who this guy is, I mean, just because he happens to have ethnic Jewish blood, right? I mean, of course, don't tell that to a Chabadnik. I mean, they walk around thinking that the worst Jew is on the highest level, I mean, is heads and shoulders above, like the best Gentile.
This is the reason why I joined. This is why I joined up.
Nothing in there doesn't speak about the gear movement. I'll tell you right now.
It's not. It wasn't the Jewish people. I didn't sign up for the Jewish people. I actually know Judeophiles, and it's weird. It's really weird. I don't want to be attached to you guys. I didn't ask for this. It was. I love this Torah thing. I love this God.
Here,
you guys are all I got.
You guys. I mean, believe it or not, you're a Jew already. You don't even know it. Here, look, conversion to Judaism, the process of conversion, mikvah, being makabel mitzvahs, all this stuff. Well, I mean, apart from being, a makabel mitzvah, but virtually the conversion process that exists today is completely rabbinic. Yeah. And I believe in the rabbinic, but conversion in Judaism, according to the Torah, which just meant knowing that the Torah was true and choosing to follow the God of Israel. If those are the standards of being in the covenant, my friend, you're already in the covenant. So there's no point of saying
the fourth house.
There's such a thing in the fourth house in Torah.
Yeah, the fourth house.
According to the Torah, anyone who believed that the God of Israel was true, right? Not the Ger Toshav, because the Ger Toshav is just made to make an oath that while he's dwelling in the land of Israel, he can't worship idols. But that doesn't mean that he truly believes in that. Anyone who truly believes in the God of Israel follows the God of Israel, worships the God of Israel, eats of his Passover. It doesn't make any, this whole conversion process we have today is completely rabbinic. You know why? It's because God knows the intentions of your heart. He knows that if you sincerely love him and love his Torah, okay? However, the people of Israel can't see what's in your heart. So they have to make a formal declaration. They get you to make a formal declaration that you are entering the people of God. And that is the conversion process we have today. But being Jewish or being in the covenant happens when you decide to want to enter that covenant. So all you guys saying that you're not Israel. You are Israel, but you've gotten lost in politics. That's it. I mean, it's complete politics.
A person has. Oh, okay, so when he makes that decision, he's not yet doing all the laws. He hasn't necessarily koshered his kitchen or.
So that's fine. In the Talmud, we only have around 3 stories of someone confronting a rabbi saying, "I want to convert," and those 3 stories take place in those 3 times, or in those 3 instances with Hillel and Shammai. And in those 3 instances, the individual goes up to Hillel and says, "I want to convert on some wrong condition. On the condition that you make me the Kohen Gadol, on the condition that you teach me Torah learning on 1 foot, on the condition that I don't believe in the oral law." And in every one of those 3 instances, Hillel converts him immediately and then teaches him Torah. In other words, what that teaches us, that being Jewish means nothing. It's what you do after you convert. I mean, by the simple fact that someone could be born Jewish shows that being Jewish means nothing, right? Because you have the vast majority of Jews not keeping Torah. I would say that maybe 10% of all Jews in the world keep Torah, okay? So obviously being Jewish means nothing, okay? This is why conversion to Judaism ultimately means nothing either. It's that decision you make, that you know that the God of Israel is true and his Torah is true, and all you guys have made that commitment, and you're all going to be judged for the Torah that you know is true and are still choosing not to follow. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
It sounds like the road of the ger. You get the people, you bring them in the front door, and then you start getting them to do stuff. The road of the ger. They got this whole big thing about doing Shabbos, or they got a whole big thing about the kosher diet rules. So he says, get the people in the front door, and then start having them do mitzvahs a little bit at a time.
Yeah, but they also teach you that you don't have, that you could pick and choose what mitzvahs you want forever.
But he encourages them to do more and more.
Well, I mean, the Torah is not a pick and choose system. That's the thing.
But you just said you're converting people based on a religious conviction to convert, and then they start teaching them stuff. So it sounds like the same thing.
No, I mean, that system is even applicable for born Jews. A born Jew is not liable for breaking commandments he doesn't know exist. I mean, God's not a barbarian.
Well, if he wasn't taught properly, and was a child of a
most secular Jews, right? A tinok shenishba, you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Right? But
they're not. They're children of a captive child.
Right.
Yeah.
Most secular Jews don't know anything. I mean, God's not going to punish them
for
what they don't know. So one argument that rabbis make in not encouraging non-Jews to keep Torah is that before the non-Jew came to Torah, before I convinced them to become Jewish, he wasn't liable for any of this stuff, but now he is liable. So in the same sense, I mean, this is why with the outreach movement in Judaism is only 100 years old. It was invented by Chabad, because also a secular Jew is not liable for breaking anything that he doesn't know exists either, right? I mean, we're judged against what we know. Someone can't fully keep Torah unless they accept Torah. Okay, so I mean, it's that whole notion of
the born Jew is stuck because it's
through the bloodline.
At Sinai, they placed it on their children. So the person born of a Jew into being a Jew is stuck. They are there. Whether
first of all, you can't place
it. They're already obligated.
No, this is one thing that, I mean, Jews have to really, think about before they attacked Christians for believing in some sort of vicarious atonement. That saying, first of all, we know that every individual dies for their own sins. Okay, I mean, just like someone cannot die for your sins, you cannot in some way take upon sins for other people. Now, Kabbalistic Judaism does teach this idea, right, which I don't believe. I mean, I believe that there is a bare minimum, minimum standards of decency that God has for the world. And I think that this is what God is going to judge a secular Jew by if he knows nothing about Torah. But I also believe that a Gentile who knows Torah is true, I mean, who knows that it's the best ethical system to have ever been devised, if he knows that's true and he still chooses not to live by that Torah, I mean, I think that a good God would also hold him accountable, which is why this whole pick and choose Judaism doesn't make any sense to me, which is what the Ger movement is. You could do a little.
Well, yeah, the role of the Ger, it does get kind of weird. But I mean, I would say you got the 7. The Noahide has the 7. And if he's doing the 7 and he knows he's doing it to 7 because it's part of the Torah, then he's doing what he's supposed to do.
Okay, right. But he's not assured
and he's there.
The world to come, right? Because it's all Agarata anyways. And I think all you guys would be Jewish if conversions actually took one day and didn't take a year. And Jewish law does not restrict.
I'm in an Arab area. In fact, actually, where I go to Shul is the next neighborhood over, which is another Arab. But I mean, I've been involved in this for, I guess, going on 9 years, and so I could convert. I could have converted. I could still convert. It would be very simple, and but yet I see so much value in this 7.
Yeah, but you just agreed
I see it as something that just
Midrashim, right?
I'm sorry.
You agree that it was all built off of Midrashim, correct?
No, the 7 is halakha.
Right. No, but I mean with the lifestyle. I mean, you can't see value in just 7 laws or 6 laws really, because the 7th law, I mean, no one keeps that today.
Which is the 7th?
Dinim in establishing.
Dinim is what making the world a settled place. It's what takes the other 6 laws and just expands it out. It explodes it out into all of life.
I mean, that's perhaps how like David Katz teaches it. I mean, according to the Rambam, the 7th law is for you to.
Well, that would be more Aaron Lichtenstein taught it, and he worked off of I believe it's the Kinuk, where he took a lot of his understanding.
Well, the halacha is that the 7th law is for you to establish courts of justice to enforce the previous 6 laws. In terms of to kill in
the strictest halakhic sense, yeah.
Right, to kill any individual who breaks any one of those laws, which means that if you steal anything like worth less than a shilva pruta, which is like a Roman coin, you're liable to the death penalty. So I mean, your movement is it's also the Rambam teaches in Hilchos Malachim that we don't offer the 7 Noahide laws to the world. We compel him to keep these laws on threat of death. So it's clearly nothing for someone to try to aspire to. I mean, it's something that you are, and if you can read, right, and could tell good apart from what's bad, I mean, you should convert to Judaism. But it's not your fault. It's the fault of the rabbis nowadays. The same rabbis that they invite.
No, I think I have studied enough that I take responsibility for it. I see this as an ethical life, that these are very real, and they expand into everything.
The 7 laws expand to everything?
Yes, all of life.
There's no commandment to fight evil.
What?
Laws. There's no commandment to love good. I mean, there's no commandment to do anything, any positive command, with the exception of establish, courts of death. Yeah,
but the Noahide laws are a trick, in my opinion. See, you just can't stop at 7. It's like Pringles.
That's right, because it sounds ridiculous. I mean, to begin with, right? I mean, that's why some other rabbi had to come up and say, "Oh, it's really 7 categories of laws."
Right.
Which is not what the Torah says to begin with. So you have to build midrash on midrash on midrash. Now, the 7 laws, again, are not midrashim, like the other guy says. That's halakha. That's what every Gentile is judged against while they're living in the land of Israel by the Sanhedrin. But it's clearly like not a standard to aspire to. I mean, to say that I see life in it. I mean, God told you. I mean, He told you to.
If I'm told not to worship idols, I can infer from that to worship the true God.
I mean,
And
you could
people
And
have a hard
everything
time
involved
not
in worshiping the true God.
right. Okay.
I mean, we have a hard time with idolatry. We have people who will pray to the dead, pray to saints. And when I say dead, I don't mean JC. I'm talking about they'll pray to their dead priests. You got idolatry problems. I mean, if when we get that, the rest will be easy, in my opinion. Some people see it the other way around. I think if we master idolatry first, we need the seven. Yeah, the seven. The most of us follow it, but idolatry. That seems to be the habit that we can't shake. You know.
So why didn't the No-Id movement exist, 50 years ago? Why didn't it exist 1,000 years ago? I mean, there was no such thing as. I mean, honestly, since the closing of the Torah, I don't think a Ger Toshav ever appears in Tanakh. I mean, this whole lifestyle didn't really exist.
It's baby steps. It's a baby step.
I think. Well, I don't want to speak for the other guy who lives in the Jewish community, but it sounds like if you live near a Jewish community who is willing to accept you, and I mean, if you could connect with only 7 laws, can you imagine what you could do with 613 or 240, which are supposedly the commands that apply to us nowadays? Not being a priest and just being a Yisrael. It just seems like if you want to enter the medical field, why be a nurse? Why don't you strive to be a doctor? I mean, the goal is to go from a lower state of holiness to a higher state of holiness, right? I mean, you guys used to walk around with a Bible under your arm saying every one of these verses, every one of these promises are to me. They're talking about me. And suddenly, I mean, you guys are just like happy with scraps, right? And
I don't see it as scraps.
The whole idea of the world of the Ger actually, and this is what people I think find hardest to come to terms with, and I'm probably minority opinion on this, but it puts the Jew and the Gentile in the same boat, because really when you look at it, everybody in Torah, particularly the great patriarchs, they've all been strangers in a strange land at one time. And that you and the Ger among you, and then God says you will be Gerim in the land of Israel. He puts there's if you begin to thread the whole Ger thing, whatever it is, and you pick all the times the Ger is talked about, from convert to Abraham himself, to Moses naming his own son after them, after the concept of being a stranger in a strange land, it really puts Torah on a very universal base level. The fact that
you're building religion off of concordance. I mean, that's not clearly, the Ger in Genesis is different than Ger in Leviticus, right? I mean, only because the term there, you know what, with the priests of Baal that were also called Kohanim, but no one is going to say that that the biblical Kohen extends to those who worship idols. You can't use the word Ger and build a religion. I mean, just because you're going down your concordance and saying, oh, well, Adam was exiled from his land and he's a stranger, and you know what? He's the father of all Gerim.
Well, he is the father of all Gerim.
Well, he's the father of all humanity, okay?
But I mean, he was a stranger. His natural habitat was Eden. His entire life existed of being a stranger. Abraham himself calls himself a Ger and a Toshav. I was a stranger, and I sojourned in the land of Egypt. So even the most,
Israelites are considered Gerim, because in the Torah it says that all of Israel are Gerim because they work on my land, right? And they're strangers in my land. So I mean, it's just semantics. Clearly, the standard is the same. The covenant is the same. Being Jewish nowadays means being in a covenant, correct?
It's universal. Huh?
Being Jewish nowadays, what people call being Jewish, just means being in a covenant with God, correct?
Yeah, people call me Jutile. That was the name that J.D. Kane and your
so
brother
there is
John.
No covenant with the Ger Toshav, right? I mean, the rabbis cannot speak about a covenant in a midrash, right? It's I mean, the Rainbow Covenant didn't include 7 laws here. I mean, it sounds like you guys, I mean, have done a lot with a little. Like way more than you guys ever, were expected to.
I mean, I read the Divine Code, which is, I think, so brilliant in so many areas, because it introduces the notion of an applicable law for the common man based in Judaism. But when I read it, it's here's how to not be like us. You know, but can a Gentile wear tefillin? Does it say, or Gentile, whatever, because he goes back and forth. Both
Why
of
would
them.
a Gentile want to? I mean, any Gentile 1,000 years ago who wanted to wear tefillin would just convert to Judaism. I mean, like, who would want to sit on the fence? The only reason people do that nowadays is because conversion, has become impossible. But I mean,
the point I'm making is it just says the only reason why it's prohibited is because we wouldn't want you to think you're a Jew and get killed for it. I'm like, I'll give you a break. You wrote this. This is the 21st century publication. Come on. It's not like that anymore. It's not saying that you can't. It's, that the covenant's open. You have to.
It's not a halacha that they can't. I mean, it just sounds silly that they say the bracha too. I mean, that's the only argument.
It's going to be gradual. Coming to Israel is going to be a gradual thing. We're baby stepping. The whole idea about the ger is all we've had to look at for us non-Jews who come out of idolatry and know there's something wrong. I came via Buddhism in a way, but when you look at this stuff, it's very, you're not us, you're over there, and the idea is we're going to be coming to the same temple, we're going to be coming to the same people.
No, you're not. No, you're not. I mean, the Torah doesn't say that. Gentiles come into the temple in any way. Okay, I mean, this is. I mean, it's a misinterpretation.
Come into the temple depends upon the different groups. This goes into the four houses again. You got the priest that goes into the temple. You got the Levites who are functionaries with the temple. You got the Jews, and then you got the nations that are outside of the temple. But they're around the temple. They're participating still.
And they're going to be.
They can go to the temple.
No,
the whole world's going to bow to Zion. The whole world's going to catch on to this thing.
No, I don't see that in the prophets. I mean, in the prophet, I'm pretty sure I know the verses that you're talking about. Huh?
Yeah, the prophets. Yeah.
No,
the Isaiah 2. The nations will look to Zion. The knowledge of God will cover the earth like water.
Wait, hold on. I mean, half of those prophecies already occurred or expired. Okay, and the other ones, the Talmud alludes to the notion that the whole world's going to convert to Judaism. That's clearly one opinion in the Talmud. Also, like in Pesach and Pei Zayin, in Pesach 87b, it says
a Noahide has converted to Judaism.
Oh well, I mean that is, something that you guys made up. What do you mean it has converted? I mean, has entered the covenant, the Torah covenant. I mean, that's ultimately what converted.
We're part of the Torah. Yes.
Yeah, you're not
the Noahide doesn't exist. There are people who reject Shituf, they reject idolatry, and they come to the God of Israel. I mean, we call them Noahides, but what do you do with people like that? What are they? It's a unique time in history. Nowhere. I mean, look at all the Christians who support Israel. This is a new thing. This is groundbreaking historical stuff here.
They should all become part of Israel. That's how you bless Israel. By increasing Israel, by becoming part of Israel. I mean, I don't understand this notion, baby steps about something that doesn't exist. The ger movement doesn't exist in Torah. I mean, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It means Gentile. Okay, I mean, for sure, a ger could, if Israel was established with a temple and a Sanhedrin, a non-Jew who's already living in the land, right? Let's say an Arab, who drops Islam, because an Arab could not truly be a ger toshav because he doesn't. For sure, he cannot be a righteous Gentile because he doesn't keep the Torah because Moses gave it, right? I mean, he has a different understanding of Torah. But assuming, an Arab who's neither a Muslim nor a Christian happens to inhabit the land of Israel, when they build a new temple and establish a new Sanhedrin, that would be a ger toshav. But that's just another word for Gentile, right? According to Torah.
There's a nokri, there's a ger, there's a...
there's a
differentiation in the Gentile, or the non-Jew.
Akum is a new word, by the way. I mean, it was created by the censors.
Okay, you've got the Nokri, you've got the Ben Noach, which is commonly what Rambam refers to as one who keeps the seven.
I mean, a Ben Noach is any Gentile. I mean, in the Talmud, that's as clear. The notion of a ger toshav, it's not clear. The Rambam says anyone who keeps or anyone who accepts the 7 laws in front of 3 Jews when the Jubilee year is kept is a resident alien. We say nowadays that we don't accept resident aliens. We don't accept
Sure.
full converts. Now then, I think the Kesef Mishnah there is of the opinion, no, that a ger toshav could be accepted at any time. And that's what what David Katz runs with.
Nobody wants. He's actually gone off on the Brisker because of the.
Oh, but the Brisker is no. The Brisker Rav lived 100 years ago. Right?
I've got a. I don't know. I haven't gotten it yet. I don't know enough about it. I just know that there's a whole other angle that explains things. I don't know too much.
If it's not in the Talmud, it's not authoritative. But the rulings of the Sanhedrin only appear in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah
so in many ways, you would give who left the cord outside of her window. I think it was in Judges or Joshua when.
Right, that was
and you got Ruth, who married the man on his deathbed and said flat out, "My God is your your people are my people."
Right, and she's understood to be a convert.
That's the message I would hope to get across more to the people who are looking, because Israel has willing allies, and I don't think they know it yet.
Yeah, those are converts. Ruth.
Those are full converts. Yeah.
Rahab, according to tradition, married Joshua. So
Did Ruth get a mikvah?
Mikvah that was invented later on.
So she didn't even need a mikvah.
Maybe she did have a mikvah, but we know, that's rabbinic. The Torah doesn't say when entering the covenant
right.
To a mikvah, right? Although the Rambam ties it into them washing their clothes before receiving the Torah, that this in some way.
They call Jethro a convert, and yet I can't find anywhere, and I've looked, and it's hard when you're going into an area that you're not familiar with. It's hard, but I can't find anything that says that Jethro had a mikvah or that Jethro was circumcised. And yet in Torah, the only realization we have, aside from the merit of having all 70 Israel's elders come and greet you, that isn't humbling enough. He said, "I know now, my God is your." Yeah, I know that the God of Israel is.
Well,
was all.
But in the wilderness, in the 40 years, nobody circumcised themselves. This isn't, it's an accepted idea. What that because. The clouds of glory were constantly moving. They couldn't circumcise themselves because they couldn't move because of that. So the general understanding is that he did convert, right? And then there's another personality named Ruel, which they claim is Jethro, that he went back to his people to in some way convert them, right? But again, it doesn't say it either way, but I'm telling you what the majority of the Meforshim teach. But this idea of a ger toshav worshiping God clearly is, and we know this individual. That doesn't exist in Torah. It's just, it just seems like, at least the way the rabbis teach it, that it's just something that's thrust upon a visitor. Someone who lives among you, but he's not part of you. It's not a. Now a Noahide is different. Technically a Noahide and a ger toshav are not necessarily the same thing. Because a ger toshav, doesn't have to accept the 7 laws because Moses said it. Okay, so the Rambam, he classifies those who accept the 7 laws because it was given by Moses or through Moses as one of the Chasidei Umat HaOlam. Now a ger toshav who accepts it on that basis is also considered one of the Chasidei Umat HaOlam, the righteous of the nations. But they're not necessarily one of those. But the Rambam does contradict himself. Not because he wants to, but it's because the Talmud does. In terms of how do we accept a convert, it says that we tell someone who comes to convert that the world to come is set aside only for the righteous, and they are Israel. And then the Rambam clearly there, you can read it in 14 of his Tirabiyah, it says that we don't tell him too much, we don't overwhelm him with too much of the heavy commandments, lest he turn back from the good path to the bad path. In other words,
Baby steps.
Lest he turn back from wanting to become Jewish to returning or remaining what he was. Now that could be a Noahide, that could be whatever, but it sounds like it's preferable to be Jewish. I mean, every Jew will tell you that it's a schut. I mean, to be a Jew, it's a good thing. But suddenly, when you have Rabbi Chlorfin coming out here saying no, only an idiot will convert, and any rabbi who pushes you or who does the process for you is in some way lying to you and misleading you. I mean, that's already. I mean, he went the other way. You know, I mean, it sounds like if the Jews were accepting the Torah on Mount Sinai, your Chlorfin would be telling them, don't accept the Torah. I mean, remain Noahides. You know,
and for those,
it sounds antithetical to the message in Torah.
And for those who come to Israel after Sinai,
I mean, why should there be a difference?
Must they? Do they have to circumcise and join part of the nation?
I mean, why should there be a difference with what God wanted for us during Sinai or afterwards?
No, I mean for the non-Jew who comes to Israel after post Sinai.
Then why should there be a difference?
Whether it be in the wanderings or in the crossing of the Jordan.
I mean, the Hebrews were non-Jews.
I mean, technically, there were 7 tablets of the whole Torah, or 70 tablets on the border of the land, that everybody would know what they're getting into. The whole Torah was placed there. It wasn't 7 laws that were placed there. I'm making sense.
Right. Oh, okay. So I don't see a difference in like God wanting the world to come to Torah pre-Sinai, post-Sinai. I mean, the Hebrews weren't technically in a covenant before. I mean, when they said Nasev and Ishma, right? I mean, this is afterwards. Once they accept the Torah, I mean, it seems like God is trying to entice them, trying to encourage them to keep Torah. And even the Rambam mentions this in Surah Bia chapter 14. But I mean, he writes that from the outset, we draw a person forth with kind words, and then he quotes Hosea, I believe, chapter 11, with it, where God says that I drew them forth with bonds of love and kind words. In other words, that he drew them to Torah. And the Rambam writes in Sefer Mitzvot that we have a commandment to emulate God. In other words, just like God drew the Hebrews to Torah, we should try to draw others to Torah. I mean, it just makes sense. You know, I mean, not to create a new standard and call it oral law and say, you know what, I mean, but the law is just for, or the 613 commandments are just for ethnic Jews, and everyone else should just try to eke out a living with 7 laws or 7 categories of laws. It doesn't, I mean, the repairing this world is a team effort, right? Like, we have to come together with the only standard that we could know to be true, which is a standard that appears in Torah. Like, no matter what someone wants to later call rabbinic or oral or midrashic or agadic, the Torah gave us one standard. It tells us that by living by this standard, King David calls it like being planted by a stream of water, right? I mean, meditating on Torah day and night. Now, I mean, the Torah's version of Torah. Now, of course, I mean, Chlorfin will tell you, well, Torah is, everything the rabbis even teach today. That's nonsense. The oral law are just the rulings of the Sanhedrin. That's all they are, right? And they're there to guard the written law. And it's the written law that lays down metaphysical reality, because it's the only one that has the authority to. It's the only one that came from God directly, right? So now, there is a notion called Halach LaMoshe Misinai, which are certain halachot that were given to Moses on Mount Sinai, like tefillin or black, or things that aren't clear in the Torah, but they don't include anything metaphysical, because the metaphysical had to come from Sinai, had to come from God directly. And in terms of the metaphysical, the covenant, the relationship we have with God, that only goes one way, between God and Israel. And he wants everyone to be Israel. He wants the world to be Israel. I mean,
eventually it will.
A better place, by keeping Torah. Or forget about the word Israel. Okay, I mean, he wants everyone in his covenant. He wants everyone, loving their neighbor as yourself.
There's the congregation of Jacob. It's not the stock of Jacob. There's also the I hear this phrase used, the congregation of Jacob. There are those who aren't Jewish who are coming to. They're getting there. there is, I want to say, a gray area, but there is a transition period where people are coming to it.
Not if conversion takes 1 day. And I'll tell you what, but the average Ger knows more about Torah. I mean, he knows almost as much as a rabbi knows. As much. With so many midrashim you guys study, that you guys know better. I mean, it's not getting there. You guys are there already, and you're building a bridge going the opposite direction. I mean,
we're all right. All that Rabbi Katz is doing is making me study Torah harder. He's not.
Even though I thoroughly disagree with Rabbi Katz, I appreciate all the stuff that he dredges up.
Nobody's done it before. Nobody's taken, at least not in the past couple thousand years. Nobody's taken this word ger that appears so many times. Love the ger, honor the ger. Don't taunt the ger. The ger gets nevela. The ger, your ger in the land of Israel. What does that mean?
There's different.
The ger, it's not a big deal. I don't understand the big deal. People compared him to Christianity. I met the first guy who said that to me not too long ago in a group, and I was like, "What could possibly lead you to think that?" The world of the ger book.
I posted that on Facebook today. That Rabbi Korfein's article that he wrote yesterday was similar to Messianics, missionaries.
You don't need to convert to anything. The Torah is there for the taking.
No, but I mean the way. I mean his methodology.
All right.
I'm not nice to anyone. So when I'm not nice to Rabbi Mesa, I'm not nice to anybody. So don't take it personal.
We're on a 3-hour tick, ladies and gentlemen.
What?
I'm going to go ahead.
3 hours.
I'm going to go ahead and cut the live portion of our broadcast off. Real quick here for all you tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what we're doing here, we do this every Thursday. It's an open roundtable Torah discussion. If you love Torah, you love God, come on in here and chat. There are examples of what we do at the Idol Smasher YouTube page. You can email me, jamestheidolsmasher@gmail.com, or join the Facebook, the Nilvah Nexus page, and you'll get updates as when we're going to meet and the link that you can join the conversation. It's an open thing. Thank you, Rabbi Mesa. Thank you, Bob.
All right.
Halagoy Wells. And for all who stop by, shalom, y'all.